Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto revives Tsunade and Jiraiya. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Today was the 15th of the 8th month of the year, as well as the Grand Tsukimi Festival. The streets of Tanzuku-gai were swarmed with people, ranging from the locals to tourists from all over the world. Various stands of entertainment were spread across the streets. These included lantern riddle games, 7 needle loops, and for the children it had candle stands, apple bobbing and scooping goldfish. Fully bloomed sakura trees acted as a decoration amongst the view. In the midst of the lively city of Tanzuku-gai, there was a fairly ordinary bar. It had dark brown-colored walls with several Japanese-style paintings hung upon it. The seating of the bar was designed to be circular, and at an eagle's eye view the seating would resemble a whirlpool. The main bar was located furthest from the main entrance. All front bar the seats were filled with various people, young couples, groups of friends, and particularly a couple of lifelong comrades and friends. The two people had somber expressions on their faces, unfitting to the festive atmosphere of the night. The one sitting on the left was a woman, one that would often turn the heads of many males with her great beauty. This woman had blonde hair which was tied into a long ponytail that reached down to her lower hip with chin-length strands framing both sides of her face, a diamond-shaped mark on her forehead and had brown eyes. She was about 5'4", wore a green robe with a kanji for gamble on it. Underneath her robe she wore a white sleeve shirt along with black short pants with a matching waist sash. But her most prominent feature was her extremely large breasts. The person sitting beside her was a man with very distinguished features. He had waist-length spiky white hair tied into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs that framed both sides of his face, red lines that ran down from his eyes, and a unique head protector with the kanji of oil printed across the metallic object upon his forehead. He was a fairly tall man, about 6'4". He wore a gray kimono under a long red vest. His pants were full-length and shared a similar color to his shirt. He also wore a pair of traditional Japanese clogs. The people of the bar were none the wiser when 2 of the most powerful shinobi that have ever been produced in the shinobi world was within arm's reach of them. They were Jiraiya the Gama Sennin, and Konoha no Namakuji Tsunade Hime. It was only a few days after the Third Shinobi World War, and the Sandaime Hokage had allowed his 2 students to leave the village for a brief vacation. The 2 Sannin had been 2 of the most powerful shinobi in the war and there were countless lives on their hands, and even lifelong veterans like Jiraiya and Tsunade need some quiet repentance. The Third Great War is finally finished. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Half-asked a flustered Tsunade. Hi, this is the Second Shinobi World War we've been through, said Jiraiya while sipping on his sake. I know a lot of Leaf Shinobi has died in the war, but I am glad that no one particularly close to us have perished. Silence was the only response Jiraiya got back. He knew he shouldn't have said that to his teammate, she had lost too much to wars already. Tsunade had changed a lot since she was a genin, the happy and exuberant girl she was then had all since vanished, and only a shell of her former self remained. The Senju had much more power than she did back then, but it came at the cost of the majority of her soul. She no longer had the will of fire that her clan valued above all others. Jiraiya looked around and saw many happy faces around them. He knew that most of them were just normal civilians around the world, but even they were glad that the war was finally over. In the last 10 years the war had rendered the economy of the world to plunder to the ground, but with the end of the violence the people of the world can finally breathe a sigh of relief and see a glimmer of hope. The people around us sure look happy. The end of the war could be one of the best things to ever happen to them, said the powerful Sannin as he sipped on his saucer of sake. Tsunade nodded absent-mindedly with a flushed face. She had already drank 3 bottles of sake. Why wouldn't they be? The world is finally at peace and they could make money again, said the woman with a flat voice. The white-haired man sighed and looked over at the teammate. Let's go join the festival. It is very seldom that we get to see the moon like this, said Jiraiya as he led Tsunade to a good moon-gazing spot. Tanzuku-gai Castle Roof. Did you know that in a faraway land in the west, women celebrate this moon as a tribute for the man they love, stated Jiraiya as he kept his gaze on the full moon. The men will praise and recite poems for the woman they loved, comparing their beauties to that of the moon. Jiraiya continued as Tsunade tore her gaze from the moon as she turned to look at her lifelong teammate. And that was something I always wanted to do? Then why didn't you? You're the gallant Jiraiya, remember? Asked Tsunade with an amused smirk. After the Second Shinobi World War you should have had girls falling all over you. Jiraiya had a soft smile on his face. Yeah, that was the case, said the man with a less than sarcastic voice that surprised Tsunade. But I never had any sort of feelings for those women, they were all beautiful but they just weren't for me, whispered the man as he closed his eyes and breathed out a long sigh. There had always been only one woman in my life, and as long as she is in my heart I could never love another woman, said the Sannin as he opened his eyes and looked over at Tsunade. Jiraiya. Stuttered a flushed Tsunade, partly from the alcohol, and the rest from the heartfelt words of Jiraiya. I met her many years ago, and my feelings for her had started since then, continued Jiraiya as he ignored his teammate's voice. She was a very unique girl. Angry and violent in 1 minute, sweet and loving in another. She was the reason I actually wanted to get hurt or injured on missions back then. Her face and actions during her healing me always made me feel cared and loved, chuckled Jiraiya as he spoke, amused by his own words. There was just something about her eyes. They were so full of life and compassion. They made me feel that she could do anything she wanted to do. I was sure that she will be the most successful medical ninja in Konoha. And I was right. Tsunade was entirely focused on Jiraiya's words. She never knew he felt so intensely of her. She had always known that her teammate liked her, but she thought it had ended many years ago. The Senju heiress had never heard Jiraiya speak with such emotion in his voice. It really made him reflect an image of a Sannin, and not just a common pervert. Jiraiya looked over at his lifelong love. I was very happy that she could be so successful, but over time I watched her get knocked down repeatedly emotionally, and the girl I loved began to change. The white-haired man knew Tsunade knew he was talking about her. The light in her eyes started to dim. And she grew distant from me. I didn't know what to do. I tried my best to comfort her, but she always pushed her away. There was nothing I could do. Tears rolled down Tsunade's face as she closed her eyes. She felt guilty about treating Jiraiya like she always had. It was like she had failed him. Jiraiya carefully moved closer to Tsunade, until their faces were mere inches from each other, and he put both his hands on her shoulders. The first time I met you was at our team meeting. I still remember that you were wearing that cute turquoise kimono and how you used to tie your hair back in a high ponytail. A soft smile graced the woman's face as she heard Jiraiya clear memory of her. That was the Tsunade I fell in love with, the happy and fun-loving Senju heiress that liked to fight with me. Tsunade started to move closer to Jiraiya as she dragged on to his every word. After I obtained the contract for the Toads I was really happy, because I thought I could have impressed you with my power, but that never happened, whispered the man with a little sadness in his voice. But I didn't give up. I spent the next few years traveling around the world, and it was some of the most important and happiest time of my life. I got much stronger and wiser through those travels, said the man as he looked into Tsunade's eyes. But leaving Konoha at the time is the one thing I regret the most in my life, Jiraiya said with a sudden anger that surprised Tsunade. It was during the time I was away you started to date Dan. If I was not to leave we might have had a chance. Jiraiya, muttered Tsunade with difficulty. She never even suspected that Jiraiya would feel that way. Tsunade, I know that this may not the best time, but this is something I have to say, spoke Jiraiya with conviction as he once again stared intently into Tsunade's eyes. Tsunade, I love you. There is nothing more I can say with words other than that. I know that you may not even remotely think of me like that, but pf. Jiraiya was abruptly cut off when Tsunade smashed her lips upon his, effectively shutting Jiraiya's brain down. Jiraiya was knocked out of his stunned state when he felt Tsunade's tongue enter and began to explore his mouth as his eyes widened. Stunned and in denial, Jiraiya slowly returned the kiss, making the both of them moan in the process. After a full 5 minutes, the two reluctantly pull away from each other, a link of saliva connecting their lips. Jiraiya, don't speak anymore, whispered the woman close to her teammate's face with tears welling in her eyes. Her whole body was shaking and her heart was breaking down. Please, this is enough. The white-haired man ran his fingers delicately through his love's hair. Why are you still hiding from me? Asked Jiraiya tenderly. "You know I will do anything for you," said the man as he pulled the love of his life close to him and let her rest against the crook of his neck. "You can stop with your cold and apathetic act in front of me. I will let you know up front that I will never give up on you. You mean too much for me, Tsunade." Tears flowed freely down Tsunade's eyes as she tightened her grip around a part of Jiraiya's shirt. "I am so sorry." Jiraiya sighed and wrapped his arms tighter around her. "I almost died during this war. It was when my troops and I were attacking one of the largest camps of Iwagakure, and just before I managed to kill the leader of the group. I thought I was going to die," whispered the Sannin softly as he felt the woman in his arms flinch at his words. "The man was not particularly powerful, but most of my men were down, and I was outnumbered 100 to 1. Jiraiya paused to snuggle deeper against Tsunade. "I laid motionlessly on the ground around hundreds of dead men. Barely conscious myself. And the only thing I could think of at the time was you, Tsunade." Tsunade wrapped her arms around Jiraiya's frame. There was a very peculiar feeling in her heart that she had spent the last 5 years to hide from. The Senju promised herself that she will never feel the pain of losing someone close to her again, and in order to do so, she pushed everyone close to her out of her heart, including Jiraiya. But the man's words had thawed his way back into her heart, and the thought of losing Jiraiya to the war was almost unbearable. Jiraiya closed his eyes and felt content with the warmth Tsunade provided for him. "I felt like a phalacher. I was praised by the village was one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live, but I couldn't even make the woman I love happy," whispered the man close to the woman's ear. "I promised myself that I will do my best to stay with you after the war. I know you are trying to break all your bonds with people close around you so you don't have to hurt again. But I promise you, Tsunade, if you let me in again, I will always be with you no matter what. Nothing will take me away from you." Tsunade lifted her head from the crook of Jiraiya's neck and stared at the man that had loved her for over 2 decades. "Jiraiya," muttered the woman as soft as the wind surrounding them. There was nothing she could say. She had no idea what could she possibly say. In just a few minutes, her view of Jiraiya had changed drastically. He was no longer the perverted goof in her eyes. He became her most precious person. The Senju could believe the amount of affection she was feeling for Jiraiya at the moment. It was to the point where she couldn't tell if she was in love with him, or if her entirely was dependent on him. The white-haired Sannin sighed and just pulled her back against him. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that you will never be alone and you don't have to be lonely all the time. I will always be here with you. By your side supporting you." The blonde woman suddenly pushed herself up from Jiraiya's body until she was looking down upon his face. "Jiraiya," whispered the Senju with her eyes still filled with tears. "I love you too." Tsunade leaned down and kissed Jiraiya again, but this time instead the kiss being filled with desperation, it was filled with affection and love. The woman straddled her teammate's lap and wrapped her arms behind his neck, pulling him deeper into the kiss. Fireworks were igniting in the sky as 2 of the Sannin committed their lives to each other. The festival and the war were knocked out of their minds as they totally engrossed themselves into each other. Both of them were acting on instinct, being too shocked and exhilarated to react rationally. And the drive behind their love was increasing dramatically, after already been waiting for over 20 years. The past week had been the happiest week of Jiraiya's life. He has been spending every minute of every day with the woman of his dreams, and the fact that Tsunade seemed very happy when she was with him made it all the better. They had spent the week after they confessed to each other staying at Tanzaku-gai. The festival may have ended, but to Jiraiya and Tsunade it was heaven. During the sunset of Tanzaku-gai, the orange glow of the sun paints over the village, illuminating the light-colored walls of the buildings. Sakura petals sails through the sky as if it was following the melody of the wind. Once again atop of the castle roof was the lovely new couple. The two were entangled with each other. Jiraiya had his arms wrapped protectively around Tsunade's waist, and his chin resting on her head as she snuggled her face deeper into the crook of his neck. Shifting his gaze from the beautiful view, he turned his head down to stare at what he considers an even more beautiful view. Tsunade was bathing in the orange sunlight. Her eyes were brimming with life and hope that had been scarce for a long time. "What are you staring at, Jiraiya-kun?" whispered Tsunade, breaking Jiraiya out of his stupor. Jiraiya smiled at his soulmate as he answered, "Just wondering how my stupid drunken confession managed to make the most beautiful woman in the world to fall in love with me." Tsunade closed her eyes and snuggled further into Jiraiya's warmth. Your words meant a lot to me. It was as you said. After Dan and Nawaki died, I began to lock myself away from the world, ignoring most of my friends, and because of this I lost contact with most of them. Whispered the woman softly. I wanted that to happen because if they were to die in the war, I will just be in pain again. I was so engrossed in that idea. I failed to see that you never gave up on me or left me, said Tsunade with a smile on her face. Jiraiya's eyes were glued onto Tsunade as she spoke. It was you that was with me when Grandpa and Granduncle died. It was you that comforted me when Nawaki died. It was you who stayed with me for days on end when Dan died. Jiraiya slowly stroked her hair lovingly as she continued. I had already given up on loving another. I thought it was too late for me. But your words showed me that I was not alone. You never left me, you were always there. Now I can truly see clearly, and can say without a shred of doubt, that I love you, Jiraiya. Finished Tsunade with stray tears flowing freely down her smiling face, as she leaned upwards to kiss Jiraiya lovingly on the lips. Jiraiya was stunned at the very least. His obvious feelings were happiness and love, now fully accepting the fact that Tsunade loves him and the impact of his confession. What emotion Jiraiya felt that really surprised him was the feeling of intense relief. Tsunade has recognized him and the things he had done for her. It was not in vain, thought the man silently as one lone tear slid down his cheek. He quickly responded to the kiss, and as if a dam erupted, all the passion and want built up inside him for years was spilled into the kiss. What started out to be a loving kiss quickly turned into a passionate make-out session. It was as if both of them were trying desperately to make up for lost time. Jiraiya forced his tongue into Tsunade's mouth, aggressively brushing his tongue against hers, making Tsunade moaned into the kiss as she tangled her fingers into the white locks of the man she loves. Removing his tongue from her mouth, Jiraiya lightly sucked on her lower lips, savoring the taste of the pair of lips he had wanted to kiss for many years. Tsunade removed her hands from Jiraiya's hair and proceeded to rub from his wide shoulders, then down towards his muscular chest, causing him to shudder at her delicacy. Taking this as a sign to continue, Jiraiya continued to kiss Tsunade as he gently laid Tsunade onto her back, and proceeded to rub her belly and waist sensually. But that was the limit Jiraiya had set for himself. He may be a pervert, but he did not want to jeopardize the most important relationship in his life. Tsunade saw his hesitation, decided to take over. She lightly lifted Jiraiya's hand off her belly and laid it on top of her wonderful breast. The Senju heiress almost giggled out loud when she saw Jiraiya's reaction to what she did. His eyes almost popped out of his head. To say Jiraiya was surprised would be an understatement. The woman he had been in love with for the past 20 years just pushed him to second base. Tsunade. If you continue this, I will not be able to control myself, grounded out Jiraiya, desperately trying not to move his hand. Tsunade led it up closer to his ear and whispered huskily, Jiraiya, I want you. I need you. Tsunade then proceeded to suck on his earlobe, pushing Jiraiya over the edge. Jiraiya tilted himself so he was fully the top of Tsunade, ready to proceed, but before he could continue, Tsunade stopped him. I want this. But can we please go back to our hotel room first? Said a flushed Tsunade with rapid breathing. Jiraiya smiled as he lifted his soon-to-be lover up bridal style. Anything for you, Suhaim. Besides, I have fantasized about carrying you to bed for a long time. It was a beautiful morning, the sky was a clear blue, the birds were singing, and the town was just beginning wake up. Just when the clock hit 9 o'clock, sunlight began to seep through the curtain of the hotel. The rays of light land on the lovely sleeping face of Tsunade, illuminating the face that showed only expressions of happiness and fulfillment. Her eyelids started to twitch and twitch, until one of them opened to catch a glimpse of the man she wanted to wake up to for the rest of her life. Jiraiya was still asleep, a small smile delicately graced his face, the sunlight was shining on his hair, causing it to look as if it was glowing. His arms were wrapped tightly around her body with her head on his chest. I never thought I would see him like this. Just 1 week ago, all I would have seen from this man was an obnoxious pervert with his signature perverted grin. But now, I can only see a handsome gentleman that loves me unconditionally, a man that can really bring out the good in me. It was true, Tsunade no longer felt the urge to gamble anymore. She had passed by multiple casinos throughout the week, but she didn't even pay it a thought. She was always too engrossed by whatever she and Jiraiya were either doing or talking about. Tsunade was not the only one who had changed. Jiraiya had not made one perverted comment about any other women except for her. The Tsunade a week ago would have beaten Jiraiya to a pulp because of his perverted words to her, but after that confession night, she loved it whenever Jiraiya would compliment her body. A slight twitch from Jiraiya's body woke Tsunade from her deep thoughts. Looking up and seeing that Jiraiya was about to wake up, Tsunade leaned up and planted a soft kiss on his lips. Slowly but surely, she felt Jiraiya return the kiss as he began to nibble on her lower lips. Instinctively parting her lips, she allowed Jiraiya's tongue to sensually explore her mouth. "Can I expect a wake-up call like that every morning, Suheim?" said Jiraiya with a smile as he fully woke up. "Only if you are good, Jiraiya-kun," replied an amused Tsunade with a giggle. "Oh, I will be good, Heim. Last night was the best night of my life. It was literally a dream come true," said Jiraiya as he pecked Tsunade on the lips. "Well, then you better expect a lot more dreams coming true," huskily said Tsunade. "Oh, this I can work with, he, perversely replied Jiraiya as he closed in for a kiss. Ting, 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 the couple was interrupted when something hit their glass window. Looking over they found that it was two messenger birds tapping their beaks on the window. Jiraiya reluctantly pulled away with a sigh, and walked towards the window to receive the messages. "It seems Sarutobi-sensei have a message for both of us," said Jiraiya as he read his own message while passing the other to Tsunade. "It seems that he wants us back at Konoha," stated Tsunade as she continued to read. "Wow, expected arrival in 2 days, what's the hurry? It does make sense, we have been gone for almost 2 weeks. Konoha needs more intimidating shinobi to prevent other villages from attacking during the village is vulnerable," calmly replied Jiraiya. "Well, we do have good news to bring to Sarutobi-sensei. He would be ecstatic that we are together," chirped a happy Tsunade. She knew that her sensei always wanted her to get together with Jiraiya, even before she was even together with Dan. "Yep, I bet even Orochimaru will be happy for us," agreed a happy Jiraiya, silently hoping that his news will cheer up his best friend a little, as Orochimaru has been acting very strange lately. "Yosh, let pack and head home," said Jiraiya with a Cheshire grin, making Tsunade giggle at her lover. Tsunade and Jiraiya were walking hand in hand through the Konoha forest, finally heading back to their home. A small smile graced their faces as they strolled down the road in a comfortable silence. Both of them haven't felt so peaceful in a long while. Whenever they were in this forest it was usually to depart for a mission, but today the atmosphere has completely changed. It was a wonder to them that they have never seen how grand and healthy the trees around Konoha was compared to the rest of the places they have been. "It feels good to be back home," said Jiraiya in a relaxed tone, whispered the man while he hugged Tsunade close to him with one arm. "Home," mumbled Tsunade as she stared at the direction of Konoha. She shifted her gaze to her new love and smiled. "Yes. It is home again," finished Tsunade as she leaned into Jiraiya's arms. The pair soon reached the giant gates of Konoha. As they stepped through the gates, they surprised the gatekeepers by their affectionate posture. Jiraiya and Tsunade then walked up to the gatekeepers with smiles on their faces. It was no surprise to them that the people of the village will react quite surprised about their new relationship, including the simple Chunin guards. "Namikaze Jiraiya and Senju Tsunade reporting back from 2-week holiday," said Jiraiya in a professional tone as he handed them their passports and ID. The two guards became nervous upon seeing two of the most powerful shinobi in Konoha up close. "Hij Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama," stuttered out the young man, fumbling a bit as he checked the passport's authenticity. "Okay. Everything is clear. Welcome home Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama." "Thank you," said a happy Tsunade as she took her identification back from the Chunin. The new couple were heading towards the Hokage Tower, still walking with their arms entangled. They attracted the attention of every person that passed them by. This was something the new couple have expected when they decided to not hide their relationship to anyone. It was not every day when you see two of the Sannin acting so affectionate with each other. Though many of the shinobi that passed by the lovely couple were not only surprised that the two were apparently an item, but also at the happiness displayed by Tsunade. They were used the scowl, permanently encased on the female Sannin's face, which was replaced with a large smile on her face, and eyes full of life. It was true, Tsunade's expression was one that resembled a soon-to-be bride. In the past years Tsunade have not paid much attention to the village or its citizens. Now that she can see, she is very happy at how lively and happy the village is. She is also silently thankful that her grandfather's and granduncle's pride and joy had such prosperity. I know you both are very happy in heaven, Grandpa, Granduncle, thought the Sannin silently as she looked up at the Hokage monument. Jiraiya was also having a great time. He was walking down the street. His face was filled with pride and joy as he held the most beautiful woman in Konoha in his arms. Some might even think that he was showing off. Jiraiya was enjoying the looks of surprise and jealousy that various men sent towards him, so much so that he even failed to see how happy the village was after the war. For the longest time, the streets of Konoha were mostly bare because of the villagers' fear of sudden attacks on the village, but just a few weeks after the war, the streets were filled with laughter and happiness. "The village is really lively, isn't it?" said Tsunade with a glad smile. "Yeah, although it might seem extra lively in our eyes," smugly replied Jiraiya, obviously proud of their happiness, making Tsunade giggle in response. The pair soon made it to the Hokage Tower, and after trekking up the stairs, they entered the building and headed towards the receptionist. The Hokage's receptionist had been working her position for a very long time. She was a woman with natural beauty that was in her early 40s. Dressed in a formal pantsuit, her long brown hair trailing down to her mid-back, with one bang covering one side of her forehead. Her name was Rina Hikari, and a smile came on her face when she looked up and saw Jiraiya and Tsunade. "Hello Hikari, how are you today?" asked Tsunade with a smile. The Sannin and Hikari leads way back, as they had to visit the Hokage Tower very often when they were younger as their sensei was Hokage. The three members of Team Sarutobi made quick friends with Hikari, or for Orochimaru, an acquaintance. "Oh, welcome home, I had a very good morning, and it seems that you are having a blast too Tsunade, and Jiraiya looks ecstatic," said a smirking Hikari as she eyeballed the position her two friends are in. A tiny tint of red appeared on Tsunade's face as she happily replied, "Yes, we are a couple now," said the blonde woman, making Hikari squeal and Jiraiya to rub the back of his head sheepishly. "Oh my Kami, I knew you two would get together. I always thought you two would make a cute couple," cried an excited Hikari as she clapped her hands together. Jiraiya chuckled. "Thank you Hikari-chan," humbly said the male Sannin. "But getting back on topic, I believe Sensei wanted to see us. He gave us quite a rush to get back to the village." The smile was suddenly gone from Hikari's face. "Yes, Hokage-sama needs to see both of you for some disturbing news," said Hikari with a serious and somber tone, surprising the other two as Hikari was very rarely like this. Jiraiya just nodded, and led Tsunade to the Hokage office. Hokage office. Sarutobi Hiruzen was known as the Kami no Shinobi, one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live, and was considered the strongest Kage of his generation. He was a shinobi that had been through 3 shinobi world wars, and had killed multiple high-class shinobi without batting an eyelash, but the legendary man was now extremely ashamed of himself. 3 days ago, Sarutobi and the Jonin Council had been investigating a case that consisted of many children being kidnapped. Hokage being afraid that it was other villages taking their potential future shinobi, the case was classified as an S-ranked mission. After they members involved in the mission followed the evidence to a hidden chamber within Konoha Academy, the cause was revealed. The Hubei Sannin of Konoha, Orochimaru, was the kidnapper. He was using the children to conduct gene splicing experiments, and that was not all the evidence suggested. They also showed that over the years, Orochimaru had been kidnapping his fellow Konoha shinobi and used them as human guinea pigs. He experimented on them hoping to develop techniques that would grant him immortality. Sarutobi was ashamed for 2 reasons. One was that he had trained Orochimaru since he was a child, and the man he turned out to be was partially his fault. Second, when the many disappearances were finally traced to Orochimaru, Hiruzen knew that it was his duty to kill him, but at the time, Hiruzen was unable to bring himself to kill his prized student for whom he had such high hopes for. "Why am I so weak? I fully knew the implications of being Hokage. The safety of the village comes before everything, and now I may have unleashed a catastrophe into the world. I am so sorry Sensei. depressingly thought Sarutobi, as he looked up at his teacher's Hokage pictures. Sarutobi was taken out of his stupor when he heard someone knock on his office door. "Come in," said Sarutobi with a commanding voice. Sarutobi's face has lightened up considerably when he saw who was at the door. His facial expression quickly changed to one of great surprise and happiness when he saw his two other students walk into the room with their arms entangled with each other. There were bright smiles on their faces as they looked over at their sensei. "Hello Sarutobi-sensei. How are you this fine morning?" pleasantly asked Jiraiya. "Jiraiya, are you and Tsunade?" stammered the anxious sensei. "Yep, I finally got the her," happily exclaimed Jiraiya with a true smile. Tsunade hugged Jiraiya closer and kissed him on the cheek, proving Jiraiya's claim. Sarutobi happily walked over to his students and gave them a warm hug. "I am very happy for you both. You definitely deserve each other, and I haven't seen you smile like that in a long time, Tsunade-chan," noted the Sandame, very glad that his surrogate daughter was happy again. "I knew you would eventually manage to woo her, Jiraiya," continued Sarutobi, earning him a cheeky grin from Jiraiya. He, thank you sensei. But let's get back to the point. I believe that you wanted to see us because something bad happened when we were gone," asked Jiraiya seriously. With a sigh, Sarutobi sat back down at his desk, gesturing Jiraiya and Tsunade to sit down with him. "About 10 days ago, me and a Jonin team set up by the Junin Corps was investigating an S-ranked mission," started the Hokage with a somber tone. "Someone was kidnapping children from various families and orphanages of Konoha, the missing numbered at 100, explained the Sandame, shocking his audience. "The further we went into the case, the more information was found. The graves of several bloodline users were raided, their corpses were missing some of their bones, all of which, when done correctly, DNA could be extracted from it. The evidence eventually led us to a hidden lab near the academy, and when we got inside we found numerous scrolls containing kinjutsu of all kinds." Jiraiya and Tsunade were becoming more disturbed and engrossed by the sudden information. "We also found that not only children were used to perform these experiments, multiple shinobi from Konoha that was apparently Kia was also being tested," further said Sarutobi as Tsunade gasped and Jiraiya to grind his teeth in anger. "From all the evidence, we have deduced that the person behind these acts is a Konoha shinobi," said Sarutobi with a hardened expression, making his two students shake in anxiety. "Only one man was in all the missions those ninja we thought were Kia. He is your sibling disciple, Orochimaru." "What?" exclaimed Tsunade, obviously shocked by the turn of events. Even though she always thought of Orochimaru as a twisted and sadistic man, but she never thought that he would be able to sacrifice his own comrades and fellow ninja in order to achieve the impossibility he calls his ambition. Her thoughts and eyes quickly shifted to Jiraiya. She knew how much the friendship of Orochimaru mattered to him. They were best friends and the greatest of rivals. Jiraiya had on an expressionless face, staring intently into his sensei's eyes. "What evidence did you have, besides that he was on all those missions?" asked an emotionless Jiraiya. "Jiraiya, we had caught him at the scene of the crime. He himself admitted that he had done all those horrific acts and he attacked the Junin team and killed all of them. Then why did you let him escape? I know that Orochimaru is strong, but I know that you could have defeated him. You let him get away," accused Jiraiya, making Tsunade look at both of them. The Sandame lowered his head in shame. "Yes, I couldn't bring myself to kill him." "Jiraiya-kun," gently muttered Tsunade. Jiraiya turned around and walked out the door, not sparing a glance at Sarutobi or Tsunade. Tsunade rushed to the door to catch up, but Jiraiya was already gone. Jiraiya was standing in the middle of an destroyed training field 9. The trees were either snapped in half or were incinerated to the core. Ash and debris were scattered throughout the area. Almost the entire training ground was covered in large craters 5 feet deep each. Such destruction had alerted many ninja and Anbu Black Ops, but when each of them arrived at Training Field 9, they were not brave enough to stop Jiraiya, as no one wanted to deal with an angry Sannin after what Orochimaru did just a few days prior. Also within the crowd were some ninja that knew Jiraiya very well. Most of them were older and had higher-ranking ninja that had the opportunity to work with the Sannin before. Among the few was Hitaki Kakashi, a young student and adopted son of Jiraiya. Similar to his surrogate father, he had spiky white, gravity-defying hair. He was wearing standard Anbu Black Ops uniform that was shrunk down so it can fit his 14-year-old body. The majority of his face is covered by a black face mask and a slanted Konoha Hite Ite that covered his left eye. Many had been surprised when Jiraiya of the Sannin adopted the son of the White Fang. The reason was what happened 8 years ago. Hitaki Tsukumo was a close friend of Jiraiya's before he died. They were around the same age, and they often trained together and drank together. Tsukumo was the one man that Jiraiya can count on to be watching his back during the Second Shinobi World War, even more so than his now traitorous teammate Orochimaru. When Tsukumo committed suicide, it pained Jiraiya a lot, but he did see the man's point of view. It was the only way for Tsukumo to keep his honor and respect for himself, his comrades and his village. Kakashi was only 6 years old at the time. Despite already being a chunin, it would hurt a boy of his age if he was to lose his father. Jiraiya knew the boy would need a family, a role model, so he officially adopted Kakashi as his son a few weeks after the death of the White Fang. At first Kakashi did not accept him as a father, or accept anyone for that matter. Kakashi locked himself in isolation, ignoring everybody, trained 24/7, and on missions he would perform exactly as the official ninja code dictates. Eventually Jiraiya managed to get his adopted son to open up a bit, sometimes having decent conversations with each other, but most of the time Kakashi only wanted to ask advice on how to become stronger. Kakashi was then put on Jiraiya's team when he was 13, he was just promoted to Junin at the time. Their mission in the war was to fend off the Kanabi Bridge, one area that was crucial for the war. The team consisted of Namikaze Jiraiya, Hitaki Kakashi, Rin, and Uchiha Obito, with Jiraiya and Kakashi being Jonin, Obito and Rin both being Chunin. See that the boy was just made Junin, and was in need of experience. Jiraiya allowed him to take leadership of the team until they needed to split up. That day Kakashi demonstrated to the group his original assassination ninjutsu, Chidori. It was an immensely powerful A-rank Raiden jutsu, by focusing lighting natured chakra into the palm of his hand, then using shape manipulation to alter the chakra into multiple electric bursts. Then lastly the user needs to time the bursts of electricity with a burst of speed to create a highly charged lighting jab at a target. Unfortunately such a jutsu has its own share of flaws. First, the jutsu must be used as a burst of speed, thus, it can only travel in a straight line in order to maintain its momentum. Second, the burst of speed is charged by lightning, causing the jutsu to be so fast it is hard to react to multiple enemies after it hits one target, or it misses. Jiraiya knew that against a skilled and experienced shinobi, they could catch the flaw of the jutsu before Kakashi can employ his ATTCK. Warning Kakashi of the flaws of using that jutsu, then Jiraiya had to split his team in two. He himself must go to the rendezvous point, where the main Iwa forces are, and the rest of his team must continue forward aiming to cut off the enemy's food supply. In the end the mission was a success, but to all the members of Team Jiraiya, the price was too great. Obito had sacrificed his life in order to save Kakashi and Rin, even gave Kakashi his left Sharingan to replace Kakashi's damaged left eye. As much as Jiraiya hates to say it, Obito's death did have some value other than saving his comrades. His death had changed Kakashi for the better. The mission had shown Kakashi that his father was right, and was still the man he thought of him before he died. After that Kakashi had become much more sociable, he had opened up to people, especially Jiraiya. One night the father and son were talking, and Jiraiya eased up on the topic of Tsukumo, instead of being reluctant to talk about his biological father. Kakashi expressed his true feelings to Jiraiya, even going as far as cry on his shoulder. That night was the first time Jiraiya saw Kakashi act his age, as well as the first and only time Kakashi called him Tsunade. Kakashi was standing on a tree branch located on the edge of Training Ground 9. He was felt tremors throughout the village and wanted to find out what the cause of it was. He sure did not expect his adopted father acting like a crazed man, obliterating the training field. This deeply worried Kakashi, his adopted father, despite being a prevert, was a usually calm and collected man, and for him to act like this, something big and bad must have happened, and he had a pretty good assumption of what it is. Jiraiya, you have to calm down soon, the villagers are already in distress. Thought the young Anbu member silently to himself. All the present ninja sensed two strong chakra signatures approaching, and they all turned over to see that the Sandaime Hokage and Tsunade of the Sannin were arriving. All attention were drawn to the village leader and the female Sannin as the two approached the group of shinobi. "Kakashi-kun, is that Jiraiya down there?" asked the aged Kage. "Hi, Hokage-sama. I take it that he just heard of what Orochimaru has done." "Yes," said the Hokage exasperated. Sarutobi sensed that there were at least 50 shinobi in the area. He decided that they needed some privacy. "Everyone here except Kakashi shall clear out of this area immediately," cried Sarutobi with authority. Waiting until all the people has left, the trio jumped down to the destroyed area to approach Jiraiya. Jiraiya had his back facing the three and was breathing heavily, showing signs of sweating. Tsunade slowly walked up to him and put her hand gently on his shoulder. "Jiraiya-kun, please calm down." "How can I calm down?" yelled Jiraiya, now facing Tsunade. He was a Konoha shinobi. He was supposed to be loyal to the village, not kill its shinobi and desecrate the graves of our heroes. Cried the man with untamed anger in his eyes. Tsunade stood at the same position, unmoving and silent. Slowly some tears leaked out of her eyes and strolled down her face. Tsunade was a strong woman. She had seen and experienced her own share of cruelty and anger, but she couldn't stand to watch Jiraiya act the way he was. It scared her. She was afraid that she might have lost the man she loves once again. Once Jiraiya saw Tsunade's tears, he immediately regretted his tone and quickly turned to embrace her. "I am so sorry, Haim. I didn't mean to yell at you. I just feel so betrayed and angry. I sort—" Jiraiya's apology was cut off when Tsunade covered his lips with her own. The Sandaime and Kakashi stood at the side, not daring to interrupt the two, although Kakashi was quite surprised at the scene, as he did not know of the two's new relationship. "Don't apologize, Yubaka. I understand your feelings. I also feel betrayed and angry at Orochimaru, but we can't choose the proper action to take if we don't calm down first," said Tsunade softly as she stroked his hair. Jiraiya shifted his gaze from Tsunade to the two others standing near him. He was never really mad at his sensei. He knew that it was hard to kill someone you considered family no matter what they did. But at the time he was disappointed at his sensei for letting Orochimaru go without doing anything. Then finally Jiraiya took notice of his adopted son looking at him with a worried gaze. The man was even more disappointed at himself at the sight of his son. He hated whenever he worried the people that he was supposed to take care of. Despite his personality, Jiraiya loved kids and being a father. He really cherished his relationship with Kakashi, and he didn't want Kakashi to be worried of another one of his father. Also, this situation also reminded him about the three orphans he took care of in AIM, Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato. If he had stayed with them longer, or have trained them harder, they might not have died. Jiraiya had always blamed it on himself somewhat, and he will be damned before he fails Kakashi. "Kakashi," started Jiraiya, not knowing what to say. "Are you okay, Jiraiya? I have never seen you act like this," asked the worried son softly. "Yes, I am fine now, Kakashi. I am sorry that you had to see me like that," answered Jiraiya with a sad smile as he ruffled Kakashi's hair. "It's okay, Jiraiya. I am just glad you are okay," gladly said Kakashi with an eye smile. Sarutobi walked towards Jiraiya and offered him a bow, shocking all in the process. "Sensei, I am sorry of what I said, please don't bow." "No, Jiraiya, I am sorry. As Hokage it was my job to at least try to stop him. I was too weak emotionally at the moment," apologized Sarutobi as he lowered his head further in shame. "It's okay, sensei," Jiraiya said as he walked over to his sensei and lifted him from the bow. Tsunade and Kakashi smiled at the two, happy that things have calmed down a bit. The Sandaime gave Jiraiya and Tsunade the rest of the day off, and said that they will continue on the subject of Orochimaru the next day. Kakashi went back to Enbu HQ to give his superior a report on his latest mission, but he said that he will be home in a few hours. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade were having their own thoughts as they walked down the main road as they were headed back to Jiraiya's apartment. They both decided prior to arriving in the village that they will stay there, as it had plenty of space for the two of them. Besides, the Senju clan house was too big for the two of them. Tsunade was very glad that they got some time to level their heads and analyze the situation on their own before discussing what to do tomorrow. This was their first day back in the village, It was merely 5 hours since they passed through the village main gate, but it felt like they've been here for days already. The pressure of the new developments was almost unbearable. Jiraiya was still having a hard time digesting the fact that Orochimaru betrayed the village. He always knew Orochimaru had an unhealthy obsession towards immortality, but he thought Orochimaru would just give up one day, when he finally acknowledged that it was impossible. Jiraiya had never thought that Orochimaru would go to such extreme extent to fulfill his sick ambition. Killing fellow Konoha shinobi is already unforgivable, but to deform their bodies and kidnap their children were just acts against nature. Jiraiya knew that he should not have doubt about whether or not Orochimaru was really so twisted, but it was just so hard to believe that his best friend would be as corrupted as this. Jiraiya was shaken from his thoughts when he felt someone grab his hand. "Are you alright?" Jiraiya turned to the side to see Tsunade looking at him with a worried expression. "Don't think too much of it today, we can deal with it tomorrow." "I'm fine, Heim, don't worry, it's just that I still find it hard to believe," said Jiraiya while looking at Tsunade. "I felt that Orochimaru was acting strange ever since the end of the war, but I never expected this. Did the village means this little to him? Did our friendship mean nothing to him?" finished Jiraiya. Only whispering the last part, Tsunade barely caught it. Tsunade squeezed his hand as an act of comfort. She hated seeing him like this. Jiraiya's face should only have that goofy smile, not this moody complexion. Orochimaru was the cause of this, that no good traitorous scum. Despite being on the same team, Orochimaru had always put Tsunade off a bit whenever they were together. No matter if it was training or missions, she always thought that there was something off about him. It was because of this that she was not nearly as close to him as she was with Jiraiya, even before they were a couple. "Are you going to try to bring him back?" asked Tsunade, slightly scared of the answer. Jiraiya clearly noticed her trembling voice. Jiraiya knew Tsunade was scared that he would leave her to pursue the traitor. Jiraiya then simply smiled down at his lover and said with conviction, "Suheim, you are more important to me than anything. Normally I would have gone to find Orochimaru since would leave the village to travel anyway, but now that I have you, I would never leave you alone. You better get used to me around here," jokingly said Jiraiya at the end. Tsunade giggled and hugged his arm, feeling much relieved as she followed her love as they walked to their home. Jiraiya had a big, yet simple apartment. The main living area was very open. A L-shaped sofa was attached to two sides of the room. A good-sized marble coffee table sat in the middle. The wall facing the sofa had several shelves that held small decorations. The kitchen was perpendicular to the living room, surrounded by a glass wall. The apartment had 3 rooms, one master bedroom, Kakashi's room, and one guest room. There was one main bathroom that is close to the living room and the 2 smaller bedrooms. The master bedroom has its own connected bathroom. "Welcome to our humble abode," said Jiraiya humorously. Tsunade walked into her new home. She had been to Jiraiya's home on multiple occasions in the PSAT. Jiraiya often had hosted gatherings and dinners parties for their team or for a larger group of friends. But this time felt entirely different than the time before. This time she had a feel of belonging. It felt nice. "I really like it here," said Tsunade with a comfortable sigh. "I'll see if I can fix up some supper, but while I do that, you can put your stuff in our room." With that, Jiraiya headed to the kitchen. "Okay, thank you, Jiraiya-kun." After a 2-week absence, they thought that the house would be scarce of groceries, but as it turns out, Kakashi had refilled the fridge despite his rapid missions. Cooking up something simple, the two had dinner, occasionally starting some small talk. They stopped their conversation when they heard the front door unlocking. Turning over, they saw Kakashi stroll in the house, looking visibly tired. "Hey Gaki, back from your report." Hearing his father's voice, Kakashi looked up to see the 2 remaining Sannin smiling at him. "Hi Jiraiya. Nice to see you again, Tsunade-sama," pleasantly replied Kakashi. "Kakashi, you can just call me Tsunade. Seeing now that we will see each other every day, you don't need to be so formal." "Yeah, I still really want you to call me Tsu-san," Jiraiya said in a whiny tone. "You will be living with us, Tsunade-sam." "Tsunade?" asked the surprised Anbu member, currently brushing off Jiraiya's statement. Tsunade smiled and replied, "Yep, would you be okay with that?" "Of course I would be okay with it, the more the merrier," Tsunade smiled in response. "Okay then, I already ate and I'm tired, so I'm gonna turn in." Kakashi, deciding to tease the new couple a bit, said, "Good night Tsunade, Ka-san," chuckling as he saw the flabbergasted look on the other two people. Jiraiya was certainly surprised. Not only did Kakashi call him Tsunade, he even called Tsunade Ka-san. "Wow, I never expected that," thought Jiraiya. He looked over at Tsunade. She had a look of slight shock and amazement. Looking back at the direction of Kakashi's room, he thought to himself, "I wonder what it will be like if Tsunade and I had a child, then the four of us would be a family. All three of us can teach our kid to be a ninja. I bet he would have blonde hair like his mother, but it will be spiky like mine. Wow, that will be a great life." As Jiraiya was daydreaming about his future, Tsunade was also trying to figure out her own feelings. "What is this feeling I am getting? I feel nervous." Kakashi may have been joking, but if me and Jiraiya are really together, then I will logically would be Kakashi's mother figure. I think I would like that. It would be like when Nawaki was alive. Maybe Jiraiya and I can have another child. Oh, our child will be so cute. A little girl with long white hair. She will have to beat the boys off with a stick. That or Jiraiya kills them all first, hehehe. Inwardly mused Tsunade, now feeling comfortable to try to be someone's mother. Her thoughts were interrupted when Jiraiya broke the silence. "Have you ever wanted to start your own family?" His tone was casual, obviously trying to ease into the topic. Tsunade got up from her seat and led Jiraiya to the sofa. She set Jiraiya down and then proceeded to sit on his lap, resting her body into his frame, then snuggled her head into the crook of his neck. Enjoying the comfort for a few moments before she answered, "To be honest, I haven't thought about it up until Kakashi called me Ka-san," she said softly with her eyes closed. "I think I would love it if he saw me as his mother figure, and I think that I would also be ready if we had our own child." As she said this, Jiraiya felt a bolt of shock down his spine. She wants to have a baby. This is great, but am I ready to be a father? Jiraiya then wrapped his arms lovingly around Tsunade and whispered into her ear, "I would love to have another child, especially because it will be our child. But do you think I'm ready? I became Kakashi's father when he was 6 years old, at the time when he was already a chunin. I never had to change his diapers or feed him. Tsukumo already had taught him how to behave, and how to view life. I don't know if I can do that to my own child." "You are definitely ready," said Tsunade. "You were always good with kids. Your genin have great respect and admiration towards you, because of your strength and great view of life. Even the 3 orphans you took care of in AIM, by the stories you told me, they too have great love towards you. You will be a great father. Okay then, let's start making our kid now," said Jiraiya as he suddenly picked Tsunade up bridal style. "Ah!" Tsunade squealed as she was carried to her room. Until the wee hours of the night, the master bedroom was filled with moans and grunts of pleasure. Thankfully, Jiraiya had set up a silencing seal so they won't scar Kakashi. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and the Hokage all returned to the Hokage Tower the next day to discuss what actions to take regarding Orochimaru. The village elders and were also the Hokage advisors, Homura Mitokado and Kaharu Utatane. Orochimaru will be put into the bingo book as an S-rank missing nin. He will have a kill on sight order, and a bounty of 100 million Ryo bounty on his head. Officially stated the Sandame, as he signed the bingo book document. Jiraiya and Tsunade were a little surprised at the high bounty, but quickly understood as Orochimaru knows many of Konoha's secrets. Information that the village cannot afford to leak. Orochimaru is an incredibly powerful S-rank shinobi, so anything short of an entire Anbu team should not pursue him. Any exception would be the two of you, Jiraiya, Tsunade, finished the Sandame. Jiraiya and Tsunade just nodded in response. Jiraiya, notify your contacts to be on the lookout of Orochimaru. Once we have an accurate location, we will launch a preemptive attack against the traitor, finished the Hokage. His tone showed the others that he now will not hesitate to kill Orochimaru. Hi, I will send them each a message via the toads, as I plan to stay in the village for the foreseeable future, said Jiraiya, making Tsunade smile and surprising the others. The Sandame smiled at his 2 students and nodded. Dismissed. Hi, replied the occupants of the room. It has been 1 month since Jiraiya and Tsunade returned to Konoha. During the time they both had to do several missions, but none of them were a challenge for either of the 2 Sannin. It was a bit tedious to have such frequent missions, especially because they couldn't spend as much time together as they have wanted. Most of the time they had for each other was at their apartment. Kakashi was a new Anbu member, so he had very frequent missions, thus Jiraiya and Tsunade basically had the apartment to themselves. Tsunade was currently sitting comfortably on her couch enjoying her day off, but silently missing Jiraiya. Her hand was glowing a soft green as it hovered over her belly. Tsunade had started to train her new apprentice, Shizune. Shizune was the niece of Tsunade's deceased ex-boyfriend, Dan. After the death of her uncle, she has been living in a small apartment that belonged to her parents, but Tsunade had basically been her unofficial guardian. When Tsunade officially started to date Jiraiya, she had been nervous about telling Shizune. Tsunade knew that Shizune looked up at her uncle and was very happy when she found out that her uncle was dating the famous Sannin. Now that she was dating Jiraiya, Shizune might think that she has forgotten her uncle Dan. Fortunately for Tsunade, Shizune did not react negatively to her new relationship. In fact, Shizune said that she was happy that Tsunade had finally found someone that can make her happy. But when Tsunade had been thinking over her situation on Shizune, she suddenly realized something. Her feelings for Dan felt really strong when they were at the peak of their relationship, but she now realized that her feelings for Jiraiya were much greater. Whenever Dan was on a mission, knowing that the man was a highly revered Jonin, she was never worried that he would die that easily, but now with Jiraiya, a ninja that was immensely more powerful than Dan, she was constantly worried for him. She had never daydreamed about her and Dan, but now she daydreams about her and Jiraiya every day. She knew that there was a part of her that will always remember and cherish her time with Dan, but she now knows that Jiraiya is truly her soulmate. During the last month of living together, it really felt like they were a family. Jiraiya was the one that usually cooked dinner, something Tsunade always loved. She herself, being the heiress of the Senju clan, never really had to cook for herself, but she was really trying hard to learn how to prepare a good meal for her family. Kakashi was a very interesting person to live with. Physically he was just a 13-year-old boy, but he was already a very strong and accomplished ninja. He never called her Ka-san ever since that first day, but he was like her son in a way. She would usually be the one to heal his wounds when he was hurt from a mission. Kakashi could have went to the hospital, but he will usually come home injured. Maybe he wanted to be healed by her, because it made him feel like he had his mother back. Tsunade was checking her own pulse and chakra signature to check whether or not she was pregnant. If she was pregnant, her pulse will feel as if it has an echo, indicating that there was a second heart beating along with her own. By checking her chakra signature, she can tell if there is a second chakra network that was draining her chakra to maintain its form. If there was, then there was a new life growing inside of her. The Sannin's hand hovered over her torso as her eyes widened. It is. Yes, cried out Tsunade. Tsunade sped towards the hospital with a series of extremely fast shunsen, and she cleared most of the village in under 3 minutes. Once Tsunade arrived, she quickly went inside to look for a medic. Coincidentally, the first medic she saw was Shizune. The black-haired young Chunin was training as a medical ninja in the hospital, undergoing a medical course that Tsunade had created after she took on the role of the head medic of Konoha. "Shizune, come over here," spoke Tsunade in a slightly louder voice, attracting the attention of Shizune, as well as many other people in the lobby of the hospital. "Oh, what are you doing here on your day off, Tsunade-sama?" asked the girl as she walked up to her surrogate mother and teacher. Tsunade had a serious look on her face as she grabbed the girl's arm. "I need you to check something for me, come to my office," commanded the Sannin as she pulled the girl along behind her. Tsunade and her apprentice headed towards her office, which she received when she was offered the job as the head medic of Konoha. After the war, Konoha had gained a lot of money from villages that had lost, and the Hokage had developed the hospital to be much larger than before. Tsunade's room was fitting to her overwhelming reputation as a medic in the elemental nations. It was comparable to the Hokage's own office. It had its own medical library and archive inside it, and many state-of-the-art medical equipment along the sides. "Shizune, I need you to check my chakra signature and pulse," said the woman as she sat down on her couch along with her student. Why, are you feeling chakra exhaustion?" asked the confused girl. She was wondering why her teacher couldn't check her own chakra. The blonde Sannin had a huge smile on her face. "I think I am pregnant," said Tsunade gleefully. "I missed my period a few days ago, Then I checked my pulse and chakra this morning. Everything was shown positive, but I wanted a second opinion. A bright smile appeared on the girl's face. Oh wow, this is great, said Shizune. I'll check right now. Shizune's hands started to glow green as she checked her sensei's belly, then checked her pulse on her wrist. The Chunin's face turned from focused, to hopeful, and lastly to happy. Yes, cried the girl happily. You are pregnant, Tsunade-sama. Tsunade squealed happily and proceeded to hug the daylights out of Shizune. Oh, this is the best day of my life, cried Tsunade as she spun Shizune around. Shizune enjoyed the hug with her surrogate mother, but her face was turning blue. Tsunade-sama. Wheezed out the girl as she patted Tsunade's back. Tsunade finally let the poor girl down with her bright smile still on her face. She couldn't wait to tell Jiraiya about their child. After all the effort they made to conceive a child, it had paid off. Tsunade remembered that Jiraiya was on a mission outside the village, but would probably be back within the day. A smirk came onto the blonde woman's face as she thought about the kinds of surprise that she could pull off with the time she had left. The Sannin looked over at her student. Shizune, please don't tell anyone about this for now. I want to surprise Jiraiya-kun when he gets back, said the soon-to-be mother as she smiled at her surrogate daughter. The black-haired girl nodded with a giggle. Sure thing, Tsunade-sama, chirped Shizune happily. Jiraiya had just finished a mission and he had to go to the Hidden Moon Village as a diplomat. Jiraiya was the prime candidate as the representative for Konoha because of his imposing stature as a Sannin, one of the most powerful ninja that Konoha had ever produced. The mission was a breeze. He had 3 Junin accompany him as protection, but it was not like he needed it though. The Sannin was treated as a guest of honor at the Hidden Moon, and the girls there were very attractive. If it was a month and a half ago, he would have spent a long time flirting with them, but now no one was more beautiful than his Tsunadeheim. Jiraiya headed back to his apartment after his report to the Hokage. And when Jiraiya arrived at his apartment he was welcomed by a heavenly smell of dinner. After a long way back to Konoha he was famished, so he quickly opened the door with a smile on his face. His hunger though, was quickly forgotten when he laid his eyes on Tsunade. His lovely girlfriend was wearing a low-cut black dress that reached down to her thighs. It was also form-fitting, thus showing off her long legs, slim waist and very full chest. The woman was leaning to the side a little as she winked at Jiraiya. Welcome home, honey, said Tsunade sweetly. Jiraiya was still too busy checking out Tsunade's body to answer her question. At that moment, he absent-mindedly thought to himself that he could die happy. Giggling to herself, Tsunade walked up to her man, grabbed him by the collar, and pulled him down for a kiss. Finally breaking out of his stunned state, Jiraiya began to kiss back. Jiraiya wrapped his arms around Tsunade's waist and pulled her closer against him. Jiraiya had always loved Tsunade's delicate scent of roses, and he was relishing in it as he enjoyed passionately kissing the woman he loved more than anything. After an extensive make-out session, they rested into a hugging position on the couch, briefly forgetting about the steaming dinner on the table. Jiraiya ran his hand through his love's hair. What's the occasion, Haim-chan? Asked the man with a whisper close to his lover's ear. Can't I just wanted to look good and prepare a good meal for you? Said Tsunade as she leaned into him harder. Come on honey, let's have dinner. Jiraiya and his lover sat down across from each other. As they ate, Jiraiya constantly said to Tsunade that the food was divine, a vast improvement since the last time she cooked. Jiraiya may have been biased about his words as he had wanted to come home to Tsunade's food since he was a genin. He could still remember how amazing it was when Tsunade actually made their team some lunch bentos many years ago. He was happier than he ever had been. After dinner Tsunade created several cage bunchin to clean up the dinner table, as the original led Jiraiya to the couch. Tsunade-chan, do you have something to tell me? Asked Jiraiya. Sensing something was off about Tsunade, she was not usually this bubbly. Okay. Tsunade took several deep breaths before she continued. I was checking my pulse and chakra signature this morning. And just in case I went to the hospital to get Shizune to check me also. Jiraiya was looking at her intently, still wondering about what happened. Both Shizune and me had the same results. Jiraiya, I'm pregnant. Jiraiya was silent and had the same facial expression before and after the news. Jiraiya-kun, say something? Said Tsunade with a smile on her face as she stroked her lover's cheeks. Suddenly Jiraiya's face had on a giant grin as he picked up Tsunade and spun her around a few times. "This is great. I'm going to be a father," cried Jiraiya happily before he suddenly placed Tsunade down and had on a look of shock. "Oh my Kami, I shouldn't have spun you around, right? Will that affect the baby, are you oh?" Jiraiya was cut off by Tsunade before he had a nervous breakdown. "Don't worry, none of what you did will affect the baby. I am one of the best medics in the world. You don't need to worry about me or the baby's health." Tsunade then had on a saucy grin. "Now take me to the room and make love to me." "What, but will that affect the bab?" Jiraiya was cut off as he was pulled into a kiss, and shoved into the bedroom. It was 10 o'clock in the morning in Konoha, and the village was swarmed with tons of missions, ranging from DS ranks. Thankfully there were many ninja that were suitable for all the missions. But unfortunately, there was only one Hokage. Sarutobi was buried under mountains of paperwork, making him regret that he ever chose to become a ninja. The aged Hokage was used to the paperwork over the years, but it had been a particularly stressful day. The day before, he had received some disturbing intelligence from one of Konoha's contacts that Kumo has plans for kidnapping the children of several bloodline clans in various countries. The Uchiha and Hyuga are two of the few on their list. The heir of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Itachi, was 6 years old, and had already become a genin. He was the one boy that has potential to become one of the greatest shinobi of Konoha, and losing him to Kumo would be a catastrophe. The Hyuga main family currently have no heir, but the wife of the Hyuga clan head, Hyuga Hitomi, was pregnant, and that information must have somehow leaked out of the village, as Kumo would not plan to kidnap a branch member that has a caged bird seal. Both the bloodline of the Hyuga and Uchiha were two of the most famous and powerful bloodlines of the elemental nations, and also two of the reasons why Konoha was feared and hailed as the most powerful of the 5 great villages. The Hokage had already sent several ambush squads to be on patrol around the village constantly, in case of any sort of infiltration. Sarutobi was knocked out of his work-induced stupor by several knocks on his door. "Come in," spoke Sarutobi professionally. The office door opened to show respective the Uchiha and Hyuga clans heads respectively, Uchiha Fugaku, and Hyuga Hiyashi. "Good morning Hokage-sama," chorused the two powerful shinobi. "Good morning, Hiyashi-san, Fugaku-san. Thank you for coming to this meeting this morning, please sit down," said the Hokage as the two clan heads sat down on his office chairs. "May I ask what is this meeting pertaining, Hokage-sama? It is unusual that you need to talk to both Hiyashi-san and I alone," asked a curious Fugaku, with Hiyashi nodding at his question. "Yesterday we were delivered some disturbing intel," started Sarutobi with an expressionless face. "It contained information stating that Kumo will try to kidnap the children of several bloodline clans throughout the world, including both your own," stated the Sandame as Hiyashi and Fugaku both had on slightly shocked faces. "Kumo dares to take such action so soon after the World War?" growled Hiyashi angrily. "It is safe to assume that they want to take advantage of the weakened state of the other villages after the war. Kumo was the village that suffered the least damage," analyzed Fugaku. "The news of your young son must have somehow been leaked outside the village," stated the Sandame, worrying Fugaku even more. The Sharingan and the Byakugan had always been two of the most powerful Kekkei Genkei in the world, so Kumo would definitely be after it, Sarutobi continued as Fugaku nodded. "There is no way that we will allow two of our most powerful bloodlines to be stolen from us. Therefore I hereby purpose that both your clans will work in conjunction with my Anbu to protect the vulnerable people of your clans." Hiyashi and Fugaku both showed thoughtful expressions as they analyzed the situation. "There is no way that I can allow my heir to be robbed from me. Working with the Hokage would be beneficial for us right now. Hitomi's and my future child will be the only heir of the Hyuga clan. Losing him or her will definitely cause disturbances throughout the main and branch members of the clan. Hitomi will also be devastated. I must not let that happen. The Anbu Black Ops will definitely be very helpful," thought Hiyashi. "The Hyuga is willing to offer its full cooperation to the Anbu Black Ops," said Hiyashi. "As will the Uchiha," echoed Fugaku with a nod. "I am glad. Please arrange your own plans within the clan homes and I will tell my Anbu to act on your orders as long as it is for your protection," said Sarutobi as Hiyashi and Fugaku nod in response. Dismissed. Hi, Hokage-sama, as the two left the Hokage office. Jiraiya and Tsunade were walking to the Hokage tower hand in hand. It was refreshing to walk at such leisurely pace. The weather was very nice, sunny day with no clouds, and just a little breeze to cool the people down. The village was as lively as usual, and the people seemed really happy to be alive. Sensei would be very happy when he hears our news, said a smiling Tsunade as she looked up at Jiraiya. Definitely, it'll be another grand K-child for him, happily said the white-haired man as he smiled at his lover. As the two continued their stroll, Tsunade suddenly remembered something. Jiraiya-kun, what name should we give our baby? Jiraiya seemed to be contemplating as he suddenly had on a knowing look. Naruto. Senju Namikaze Naruto, said the man with a soft smile on his face. Maelstrom I like it, said Tsunade as she thought it over. But how did you have such a specific name thought out so fast? Jiraiya smiled as he answered. Naruto is the name of the protagonist of my first book, Legend of the Gutsy Ninja. I want our son to grow up to become a ninja like that. One that will be able to bring peace to the world. I have never read that book. Do you still have a copy of it? I should still have a copy. Do you want to read it? Asked Jiraiya with a smirk. Yes, it should be interesting if you are willing to name our son after it, said the woman before she paused for a while. Hey wait, what if we have a little girl instead of a boy? Said Tsunade loudly. Oh, I know that it will be a boy, I got a feeling, said Jiraiya with a smirk. Oh no, it will be a cute white-haired girl, said Tsunade with a challenging look. Oh when was the last time you won a bet, he. Just you wait Baka, challenged Tsunade as she gave Jiraiya a mock glare. Before the two Sannin knew it, they arrived at the Hokage's tower. They approached Hikari that was working intently at her desk. Like her boss, Hikari's desk was also filled with many folders and files, most likely all the finished missions that needed to be signed by the Hokage. Hey Hikari-san, is Sensei available? Asked Jiraiya with a laid-back tone as he and Tsunade walked up to the woman's desk. Oh hey Tsunade, Jiraiya, greeted the woman kindly. Hokage-sama just finished a meeting, he should be free now except for the paperwork, replied Hikari with a smile. Tsunade giggled as she remembered how her sensei had always complained about his mountains of paperwork. Well, he will be glad to catch a break, we need to talk to him for a bit. Okay, you two go ahead, chirped Hikari as she returned to her work. Jiraiya knocked a couple of times on the door. Hearing his sensei's voice say, "Come in," through the door, he led the both of them through the entrance. As the two Sannin stepped inside the office, they noticed that their sensei looked more disheveled and older than normal, and was surrounded by mountains of paperwork. It was really quite funny to see the Kami no Shinobi like so. Hey sensei, glad to see you so happy, joked Jiraiya as Tsunade giggled. Sarutobi's face lit up as he saw his students walk in his office, hoping that they will allow him to stop working for a while, and he can have a nice conversation with his surrogate son and daughter. Very funny Jiraiya. Are you and Tsunade-chan here to visit your beloved sensei? Stated the Hokage with a smirk. Of course we are sensei. We also have some great news to tell you, said Tsunade with a smile while she imagined what her sensei's face would be like when she told him the news. The Sandame almost grimaced at the though of more bad intelligence. Good news I hope. Oh I think you will be very happy, chirped the blonde Sannin as she smiled at her teacher. Okay, enough with the suspense. What is it? Jiraiya looked at Tsunade and smiled, indicating that she should be the one to tell. Tsunade happily nodded and turned to her sensei enthusiastically. Sensei, we're having a baby. Sarutobi had wide eyes as he absorbed what Tsunade said. Suddenly he had a huge grin on his face, showing obvious happiness for his students. Tsunade and Jiraiya's child would be like a grandchild to him. Quickly standing up, he walked over to his students and proceeded to hug them tightly. I am very happy for the both of you. I know you two will be great parents, and your child will be a great shinobi. Jiraiya chuckled and nodded. Of course, he is our son after all. He will be a very strong and talented shinobi if he is anything like his parents. Making Tsunade sigh as she heard Lure Lover say that it is going to be a son again. Jiraiya and Tsunade was surprised when Sarutobi suddenly had on a serious and worried expression. Sensei, is something wrong? asked the spy master of Konoha. Sarutobi nodded, taking a few deep breaths as he repeated to tell Jiraiya and Tsunade what he told Fugaku and Hiashi a few moments ago. Jiraiya was very surprised that Kumo would do something so reckless right after a world war. Bloodlines are the most treasured possessions of ninja villages. Trying to kidnap children from the clans would result in wars. You are telling us this because you are afraid that our child will also be targeted? Asked Tsunade as she gripped her fists tightly. Tsunade-chan, you are the only known member of the Senju clan that is still alive. Not only that, but the child is the son or daughter of you and Jiraiya, two of the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations. And Kumo will undoubtedly feel extremely threatened by such a person. So we must consider that they will try to kidnap your child even if the Senju clan doesn't have an official bloodline. Tsunade was very angry. She was very happy that she was going to be a mother and have a happy family with Jiraiya, but the Kumo sons of bitches were threatening her child that wasn't even born yet. I don't care whether it would start a war or not, but if they dare to harm my child, I will do anything to destroy the Raikage and his damned village, roared Tsunade. The Sandame sighed and nodded with his eyes closed. I know your personality very well, Tsunade-chan, and I understand that a mother will do anything to protect her child. But we shouldn't be talking about how we will react if they manage to kidnap one of our own. We must take precautions. If the heir of the Senju clan was to be kidnapped by Kumo, it will cause international havoc among the shinobi world, especially in Hai no Kuni. Quote, Jiraiya nodded as he wrapped his arm around his lover's shoulders. Sensei is right, Tsunade. We are two of the Sannin. It will be very hard to harm our child if both of us are there with him. But despite that, we still don't want them to attempt it, as just a mere attempt will cause international disturbances that might trigger another war. That is something that neither the people or the village can handle right now. The Sandame nodded his head, silently agreeing with Jiraiya. Tsunade nodded her head, now calming down. She decided to try and find a solution. So we should hide that fact that I am pregnant? As much as I don't want to, I am afraid that it is the most simple and effective way, said Tsunade's sensei. That would be a very hard thing to do if we are still in the village. Jiraiya offered as he took up a thinking position. The villagers do not know that we are trying to hide the fact that Tsunade is pregnant. The Inuzuka and Hyuga will be able to tell by their noses and eyes that Tsunade is pregnant. They will just think that she is hiding it from her friends or the village as a surprise, but not to prevent a crisis. There will be nothing holding back the gossip and rumors that will begin to float around the village. The rumor will also spread like wildfire. Ever since last month a lot of people have seen the two of together. It is no longer a surprise that we are dating. The people will spread the news that we are having a baby because they will be very happy if that is true. Our baby will be the heir of two Sannins and the Senju clan. Tsunade and Sarutobi were enlightened by Jiraiya's quick conclusion. It was very simple. The villagers will not refrain from spreading rumors simply because they don't know of the implications of their actions. We also can't just tell the Inuzuka or the Hyuga clan heads about our situation because that means they will have to tell their clan about the pregnancy. Stopping a rumor is nowhere near as hard as trying to prevent a leak of a secret that over 500 people knows about. Jiraiya stared intently at his lover and sensei as he had on a conclusive look. Tsunade and I must leave the village until our baby is born. Maybe even longer. Jiraiya's statement caused some shock to go through the other two occupants of the room. It will not solve the whole problem, but it will prevent the Inuzuka and Hyuga from finding out about the pregnancy, thus eliminating the treat of rumors and therefore stopping the Kumo spies from pay attention to us. We can decide what to do regarding Kumo when we come back to the village after the baby is born, because then Tsunade will be able to fight without any restraint and the baby could be hidden within the village if need be. No, cried the Fiel Sannin as she glared over at her lover. Jiraiya, I will not hide our baby from the world and have him or her live a life of isolation. If that is what it means if we stay in the village, then we will raise the baby outside the village. Tsunade, the hiding will only be temporary, but if need be, we would have to raise the baby outside of the village. That will solve all the problems for our baby. Sarutobi nodded in response, showing that he was not against the idea. Although Konoha, in a manner of speaking, will lose the two of the remaining Sannin, but it will still be better than losing the Senju heir. That idea is applicable. You two can be classified as doing a long-term mission assigned by me personally. Your family can return to the village once the threat has gone, or your child is capable of defending himself," said the Sandaime logically. Tsunade felt the need to ask a question. "Sensei, Konoha is the strongest shinobi village in the elemental nations. Why the fuck are we running away from a mere threat by Kumo?" Surprisingly, it was Jiraiya that answered. "Su-chan, it doesn't matter who is the stronger village. Just because Kumo is being unreasonable and irresponsible, it doesn't mean that we have the right to do the same thing. This whole situation can cause the Fourth Shinobi World War. We have the responsibility as a shinobi village to stop any wars from destroying the lives of millions of people." Sarutobi was very proud of Jiraiya at that moment. His words were ones of a Hokage. He could not help but regret that he paid more attention to the traitorous snake than the fine shinobi. Tsunade reluctantly nodded at Jiraiya's answer. They couldn't be so selfish. Her ancestors will be rolling in their graves if they were to start a war and jeopardize the well-being of the village for personal reasons. We still have a few weeks before the symptoms of my pregnancy will show, so we still have time to think about this. But we cannot let Kumo step on us over and over again. We must find a way to stop them and retaliate. Jiraiya and Sarutobi nodded to her reasoning. "But if we are going to be away from the village during my pregnancy, there is a safe place that we can go." "Where is that?" asked a confused Jiraiya. He was just thinking of the same thing a few minutes ago, and he could think of anywhere safer than Konoha already. "We can go to where my Ba-chan is right now. Uzu no Kuni." Uzu no Kuni, a small country located at the coast of Hai no Kuni. The small island once contained one of the powerful shinobi village in the elemental nations, Uzushigakure. Its ninja were revered for their fuinjutsu, to the point that it made them some of the most feared shinobi in the world. The head shinobi clan of the village was the Uzumaki clan, distant relatives of the Senju clan. Even the Shodem Hokage married an Uzumaki woman after Konoha was founded, and it brought Konoha much closer to Uzushigakure. The woman was not any Uzumaki, she was the daughter of the clan head, and a known prodigy of the clan, Uzumaki Mito. It was also because of Uzumaki Mito that the Shodem gained an upper hand when he was fighting Uchiha Madara. At the time of the cataclysmic battle, the leader of the Senju and the Uchiha were almost equal in strength, with the Shodem being stronger by a tiny margin. Madara, seeing the tide of the battle was tilting against his favor, he decided to use his trump card. He summoned the most powerful of all Biju, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The beast was truly incredible, the power it showed was apocalyptic. With a swipe of one of its tails, it could level mountains and valleys, and send tsunami to the coasts. The Shodai of Konoha was known as the most powerful shinobi of his time, and he had proved his power when he managed to defeat Uchiha Madara as well as take control over the Kyuubi during the battle. It took everything the man had, and his will of fire had lasted through the battle and diminished the hatred caused by the Uchiha. Even though the Uchiha man was defeated, Hashirama still had to deal with the Kyuubi, as it will eventually wake up from its slumber created by the Shodai. Knowing that she had to help her husband, Mito took advantage of the moment that the Kyuubi was unconscious, and sealed it within herself using the Shisho Fuin, creating and becoming the first Junchuriki of the Kyuubi. The crisis was finally over after the sealing of the Biju, but it laid behind scars. The area which the battle took place was split asunder, and will be known for the future generation as the Valley of the End. A place where a never-ending river flows, just like the battles that will never end. At the time, the elemental nations were slowly but surely settling into multiple countries with their own shinobi villages. The Uzumaki established their village within their namesake, Uzu no Kuni. Despite being in two separate nations, Konoha and Uzu kept very close relations with each other. Konoha had even included the Uzu symbol within their shinobi symbol, as well as their shinobi flag jackets. During the Second Shinobi World War, Uzushigakure was targeted by Iwagakure and Kumogakure due to their skill with fuinjutsu. It ultimately was destroyed by the two nations. Any survivors of the village were scattered among the world, forever in purgatory. The people of Uzushigakure were noted to have notoriously long lives, so it gained the epithet, the village of longevity. Mito Uzumaki was no exception. She was born with naturally strong-like force, which was further complemented by her being the Kyuubi Junchuriki. After the death of her husband, Mito had stayed in Konoha, taking care of her children and later on grandchildren. Mito loved her family deeply. The death of her son and daughter-in-law had devastated her. They were still very young, and was forced to leave behind their children. Tsunade was only a newly instated genin at the time, and Nawaki was merely a toddler. Mito was the only family they had left. She was naturally very proud of her granddaughter when she made a name of herself by contributions in the war. But the death of Nawaki was the last hit she could take. Nawaki was only a genin when he died. He was filled with dreams and ambitions that she really believed he would accomplish. Deciding that she needed to leave Konoha, she decided to visit her now destroyed homeland. The Sandaime really didn't want her to leave as she was a very important figure in Konoha, but Sarutobi still had major respect for the wife of his sensei, so he ultimately let her go. So, in over 50 years, Uzumaki Mito returned to Uzu no Kuni. Tsunade and Jiraiya were both walking through the village in silence, each thinking of a solution that would be best for everybody in the current situation. Tsunade knew that Uzu no Kuni would be a very safe place. Everybody in the elemental nations thought that Uzushigakure was destroyed, but that was not entirely true. About 15 years ago, her grandmother, Uzumaki Mito, set out to find the ruins of Uzushigakure. She had sent Tsunade a letter containing information of what she had found. When Tsunade read the letter, she was very surprised. There were survivors. Tsunade always knew that the Uzumaki was not extinct, but figured that everybody had ran away from Uzu no Kuni. According to her grandmother's letter, the village was mostly destroyed, but there was a single Uzumaki family that had survived the battles and stayed in the village, trying to repair their home. The family only consisted of 4 people. A father and a mother, their son and his fiancée. The parent were retired shinobi who were too old to fight in the war. They survived because they were shielded by some large debris that hid them from view and wasn't heavy enough to kill them. The 2 younger ones were seasoned jonin of Uzu. They had fought in the front lines gallantly, and it was by a miracle that they had survived. At the time, a Kumo shinobi launched an A-rank Raiden jutsu straight at the 2. They both wanted to shield the blast from the other. The result was that the both took the hit and spreaded to damage of the jutsu evenly amongst the 2 of them. The damage spread was not enough to kill them, but it did knock them out at the time. Thinking that the 2 was dead, the enemy had gone to pursue other Uzu shinobi. Unfortunately, the Raiden chakra of the jutsu had caused the 2 to suffer enormous chakra network damage, and they were unable to mold chakra ever again. When Mito arrived at the destroyed village, she was detected by a seal that was set up by the remaining Uzumaki. Within minutes she was greeted by a ready-for-battle family. Despite being unable to use chakra, there were still some fuinjutsu that are open to the 2 jonin, and the older couple still had some of their skills from their prime. After calming down and explaining to the Uzumakis who she was, they were overjoyed to know that there was still Uzumakis willing to help their homeland. Mito had already been in Uzu for over 15 years already, trying to salvage what was left of their culture and fuinjutsu. Both the Sandaime and Jiraiya knew that it will be a safe idea for Tsunade to have her baby in Uzu. Not only was it geographically secure, she would also have Uzumaki Mito there to help her in case of need. Tsunade knew that her grandmother would be overjoyed if she knew her lovely granddaughter was having a baby, and would welcome her and Jiraiya with opened arms. Not to mention that Tsunade herself really missed her grandmother. After her parents died, it was her grandma that took care of her and Nawaki. To her, Mito will always be that loving and gentle soul. Jiraiya-kun, I think we should go to Uzu no Kuni during my pregnancy, whispered Tsunade, making sure that no one was within earshot. Jiraiya nodded as he answered, Uzu no Kuni is certainly the #1 choice at the moment, said Jiraiya matter-of-factly. It would also be great if your grandma would get to meet her great-grandchild, said Jiraiya with a lightened expression. Tsunade nodded as Jiraiya continued, we must leave Konoha during your pregnancy, that much we know. Until we establish enough power that will intimidate Kumo, we must not allow an internation dispute to happen between us. Okay, let's go to Uzu no Kuni. Jiraiya, Tsunade and Sarutobi had sent a messenger bird to Uzu no Kuni yesterday. It should be arriving at the destination very soon as it takes only 1 day by flight to get to Uzu no Kuni. The letter was sealed by Tsunade's blood, meaning that only a relative of Tsunade could open it. Tsunade and Jiraiya were already packed and ready to leave, they are just waiting for a reply. A mission file was also created by the Sandaime stating that he is assigning Senju Tsunade and Namikaze Jiraiya a S-rank long-term mission that will take about a year to 4 years depending on circumstances. Initially, the Hokage didn't want 2 of the remaining Sannin to leave the village for that long, but the extra 3 years will eliminate any sudden risks that would come up pertaining the Senju heir. There are only a handful of people in the village that knows about Tsunade's pregnancy. Excluding Jiraiya and Tsunade, only the Hokage, Kakashi and Shizune knows. Kakashi and Shizune had been contacted by the Hokage and were told to keep the pregnancy a secret. Shizune's being the one to confirm the pregnancy was not surprised by the fact of the baby, but she was enlightened when she was told the dangers of the child will have his identity was leaked. Kakashi on the other hand was very surprised by the pregnancy. He didn't think his dad and Tsunade would have a child so soon. On one hand he was also very happy because the child would be his little brother or sister, something that he had always wanted, but on the other hand, he can't follow them to Uzunokuni. The village right now really needs high-level shinobi inside the village to induce fear into potential enemies and to carry out high-ranked missions to show the world that they still maintain their strength. Kakashi knew that it was his duty as a Konoha shinobi to stay in the village, but he didn't want to lose his family again, even though it was only for 4 years. Jiraiya was also uncomfortable leaving Kakashi by himself in the village, but he knew there was no other way. Kakashi and his relationship had grown into one of real father and son. They often trained and talked to each other. Sometimes Kakashi would tell Jiraiya his stress and pressure caused by constant Anbu missions, which Jiraiya had a lot of patience for and would have insightful advice for his son. Both were afraid that their relationship would deteriorate as time goes by. It was 8 o'clock at night, and Tsunade was already asleep. She had a busy day. She had to assign many new jobs to the current hospital staff, as they had to take over what she had to do. She also left Shizune a bunch of scrolls that contained advanced medical ninjutsu that she developed, hoping that Shizune will continue to progress as a medical ninja. Jiraiya was at Tsunade's side, brushing a stray strand of hair away from her face and stroking her still flat stomach, which was covered by a white nightgown. Jiraiya was very excited about the baby. Even though he has Kakashi and had taken care of the 3 Ain kids, this would be the first time he would take care of a baby. His kid might be the child of prophecy he has been looking for his entire life. After all, being the heir of the Senju clan and the child of 2 Sannin, their child undoubtedly would be very powerful. A slight nudge from Tsunade broke Jiraiya out of his thoughts as he looked down to see the beautiful brown eyes of his lover staring back at him. He could look into those eyes for the rest of his life and not get tired of them. In fact, he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Tsunade. "Sorry, did I wake you, hon?" "Yes, but it okay. I love waking up to you," said Tsunade with a smile as she leaned up to kiss him. Returning the kiss, Jiraiya thought to himself, "I need to ask her now." Breaking the kiss, Jiraiya stared deep into Tsunade's eyes, slightly surprising Tsunade. "Is something the matter, honey?" "Tsunade-chan. When we arrive at Uzunokuni, will you marry me?" asked Jiraiya nervously, slightly afraid of her answer. Tsunade was stunned to say the very least. She wasn't expected that. She knew that Jiraiya would one day ask her to marry him, but she didn't know that it would be so sudden. "Is it because of the baby? Does he feel obliged to marry me?" thought Tsunade vulnerably. But as she thought the situation over, she knew that Jiraiya wouldn't want to marry her just because of the baby. He loves her. She knew that he would ask her no matter what. Looking back at Jiraiya, she saw that he had on a sad and regretful expression. Knowing that he might be thinking that she'll reject him, she quickly blurted out, "Yes." "Huh," was Jiraiya's intelligent response. "Yes. I would love to marry you, Jiraiya-kun," said Tsunade with the largest smile she could muster. Jiraiya's face broke into a huge grin as he hugged her furiously while chanting, "Yes, yes, yes." Smiling, Tsunade kissed Jiraiya again, effectively calming him down from his high. Tsunade slowly disrobed herself and proceeded to straddle his waist. "And now this is for celebration, and for you waking me up." Their room would have moans and grunts echoing within its wall for hours to come. The next morning Jiraiya was the first to wake up. Noticing that Tsunade was still sleeping, he decided to just lay there to gather his thoughts. Jiraiya's thoughts drifted to Kakashi. He knew that the boy was strong physically, but was fragile mentally. After the loss of his biological parents, Kakashi had to try very hard until he managed to open up to people. He also had taken a huge blow when Obito had died. Now that he needs to be separated from his family, he might be unable to take it. Jiraiya knew that he needed to talk to Kakashi, so with that thought, he decided to go to Kakashi's room. Kakashi was staring at the ceiling of his room. For a boy of 14, he had a very plain bedroom. It had light yellow walls with several pictures hanging on it. There were pictures of Konoha and various sceneries. Several ones that stood out were that picture of Kakashi's biological father Tsukumo hugging his pregnant mother Hitomo. It was the only picture Kakashi had of his entire biological family as his mother died at childbirth. There were several bookshelves that was filled with ninja scrolls and bingo books. Though discreetly hidden between several encyclopedias were several adult magazines that he enjoys studying, as well as a series of books that his adopted father had written before he started dating Tsunade. Icha Violence, which he read almost every night. Laying on his blue twin-sized bed, Kakashi was thinking about what his life would be like when Jiraiya and Tsunade left. Sure, after his change of attitude he made much more friends than he had his entire life. People like Sarutobi Asuma, Yuhi Kurenai and Shizune were very nice to talk to, and Maida Guy, despite his idiosyncrasies, was a very good friend and a strong sparring partner. For the last month he really enjoyed living with his adopted family. It was the first time in his life that he had a complete family, but unfortunately, like all things, at some point it must end. Kakashi's depressing thoughts were interrupted when he heard someone knock on his door. "Come in," said Kakashi with his recently developed carefree voice. The door opened to reveal Jiraiya. Almost immediately Kakashi shut off all of his negative emotions off of his face. But Jiraiya managed to catch a glimpse of his true feelings. "Hey Gaki, how are you feeling?" asked Jiraiya with a caring voice. "I'm fine, Tsunade." Kakashi had started to call Jiraiya Tsunade for a few weeks now. It no longer felt like that he was betraying his biological father. Kakashi knew that his birth father would want him to have his own family. Jiraiya smiled when he heard Kakashi call him his Tsunade. He always liked the feeling of being a father. Though he is slightly put off that Kakashi is once again hiding his feelings of others. "Kakashi, I'm sorry," said the man, making Kakashi look up at him. "I know it's a bad time to leave you alone in the village, but I want you to know that you will never be forgotten or unloved. I am your father and I will always be there for you and love you, and the same thing goes for Tsunade. She might not say it out loud, but she really likes being your mother figure, and she truly cares and values you." Kakashi felt his defense weakening. Is he serious? Maybe I won't lose this family after all, thought the young man, and it was then that he felt something wet drip down his face. Kakashi reached up to touch his face, and only then did he know that he was crying. He hadn't cried since the death of his father, as he thought of crying as a sign of weakness and fragility. Jiraiya was also surprised to see Kakashi cry, as he has never seen the boy cry, but he was also glad because tears will help release some repressed feelings of Kakashi. Jiraiya slowly approached Kakashi to give him a fatherly hug. "It's okay, you will always have a family. You have a father, a mother, and a soon-to-be-born brother or sister." Kakashi proceeded to nod into his father's shoulder, feeling surprisingly relieved. It took about 5 minutes for Kakashi to calm down. The two began to have some small talk, now feeling much better than before, and it was then that something caught Jiraiya's eyes. It was a few familiar side book covers of Icha Violence. "Oh ho ho, what do we have here?" said Jiraiya teasingly as he walked toward the bookshelf to retrieve the books he wrote. Kakashi's face burned up as his father caught him reading those books. He tried to tell an excuse but nothing comes to mind. His mask-covered mouth just moved up and down with nothing coming out. "I see you are enjoying my beautiful masterpieces of art, and seeing the condition of the books you read them a lot." Ha 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 ha, don't worry Gaki, it is normal that a kid your age would want to read this genre of books. It might be even worse for you since you get to look at those kunoichi in those tight form-fitting Anbu pants," said Jiraiya with a perverted grin that he rarely had anymore. With a sigh Kakashi gave up finding an excuse. He was a growing boy in puberty with crazy hormones appearing out of nowhere spontaneously. "Yeah, I really like those books. By the way, are Kasumi and Natsuki going to make it as lesbians?" Jiraiya had on a straight face as he heard what Kakashi asked, and soon a grin appeared. and finally he erupted into a fit of laughter. "Oh Cammy, ha ha ha. I bet you really want to know if those hot lesbian beauties would have right?" Kakashi nodded furiously as he burned up. "Well, I don't think I will continue these book anymore as I already have Tsunade, and since most of the inspiration from the books are my personal experiences, I won't have any inspiration, because I don't want your mother to kill me." Kakashi was disappointed that the Icha Icha series is discontinued, but was surprised that the book were based on his father's personal experiences. "You mean that the stories were based on your life?" asked the young man with a EW in his voice. "Oh yeah, I met some beautiful woman when I was traveling, hee. Wow, you're the man too, San, but it sucks that you can't continue the series. It is true that I like writing, especially those books, but Tsunade is all I need for the rest of my life. That you would understand when you find that special girl of your life," Jiraiya said with a faraway look, before his face adopted a grin as he continued. "Hey, I got an idea. How about you continue the series for me?" Kakashi choked on his own spit as he heard what his father said. "What? Yeah, I am sure that you will have your own stories to tell as you work in Anbu. After all, there is nothing like adrenaline-filled mission as foreplay, right?" said the man with a chuckle. "I will contact my publisher about you tomorrow. Oh, you are gonna do great." "Wait to San, are you sure?" "Yes." Kakashi ultimately agreed to Jiraiya's offer. He was personally very excited about it. He had never really looked for a girlfriend, but he was always a fan of the fairer. And after the was adopted by the former super pervert, he has developed a somewhat inner pervert himself. He doesn't want to use girls like some men does though. Despite his pervert tendencies, he has a lot of respect for women. That was why he could date Rin. He really didn't see her in that light, he didn't want to play with her feelings. Starting tomorrow, he might start flirting back to some girls he admired, just for research. Mito Uzumaki was living in a small house she and her remaining Uzumaki built together. The older couple goes by the names of Hirako and Hikari Uzumaki, and their son is named Hiroshi Uzumaki, who married Tomo Uzumaki. During the 15 years they were together they managed to recover most of Uzushiogakir's scrolls and jutsu. About 10 years ago, Hirako died of old age at 77, with Hikari following a few months after at 75. Hiroshi and Tomo were from the Uzumaki clan, thus they should have strong life force and longevity. Unfortunately, after being hit by that Raiden jutsu that destroyed their chakra network, their lifespan were shortened considerably. Hiroshi died of natural cause a few months ago and Tomo was taken when she gave birth to a healthy girl just a few days ago. It seems that Tomo only had enough willpower to last until she gave birth, but she spent the last of her willpower during childbirth. She died a few moments after she first laid eyes on her beautiful daughter. They both had thought of a name for the baby girl before they died, Kushina, Uzumaki Kushina. The baby already had hints of Uzumaki red hair, pale skin tone, and a pair of beautiful violet eyes. They had left Kushina to the care of Mito, a task which Mito had instantly agreed to, but she knew that she doesn't have a long enough life to watch the girl grow up. She must bring her back to Konoha. Uzumaki Mito was carrying little Kushina in her arms as she got ready to pack up her belongings and head to Konoha, but it was at that moment she sensed something approaching. Standing on guard she waited for the object to come into view. She relaxed when she saw that it was a messenger bird. And she was also very surprised that it was from her granddaughter, as she hadn't heard from Tsunade for a few years already. The elder quickly opened the letter attached, as she thought that it might be an emergency. Once again surprised that it was protected by a blood seal, she quickly swiped some of her blood over the seal. Finally getting her hand on the letter she began to read. A smile graced her face as she read it, and it only got wider as she read, and at the end she was ecstatic. Tsunade was having a baby with Jiraiya. She always wanted those two to be together as she knew that Jiraiya truly loved her granddaughter and now she would have a great-grandchild. To make things even better, they want to come to Uzu during the pregnancy, even though the reason was because of danger. Mito was very happy that Tsunade would come to Uzu. Mito honestly did not want to leave Uzu, but for the sake of Kushina she must, but because Tsunade was coming, she could tell her to bring more supplies and resources so they can stay a while longer. As if sensing her happiness, Kushina started to giggle at her surrogate great-grandma, making her look even more adorable. "Oh, Kushi-chan is also happy, right? You are going to be great friends with Tsunade-chan's baby." Mito happily said to the baby as she formulated a response to Konoha. She stated that she would be more than happy to have her granddaughter live with her again, and that she needed more resources and supplies, so Mito gave them authority to access the Senju clan account, as she was still the clan head. Attaching the message to the Konoha messenger bird, she let it fly back to Konoha as she anxiously awaited for her granddaughter and grandson-in-law's arrival. Sarutobi was brooding in his office. On his desk were several stacks of paperwork, each one was about 3 feet tall. The Hokage usually only gets one stack of paper that high in a single day, but it was the day that the Civilian Council found out about the long-term mission Jiraiya and Tsunade were assigned. The Civilian Council had always been the cause of many headaches for the Hokage and the Shinobi Council. Since the establishment of Konoha as a shinobi village, civilians had been an important part of society. Since the civilians compose of over half of Konoha's population, the village would have to account for their opinion as well, hence the development of the Civilian Council. At first, the Civilian Council were only allowed to partake in matters that only affects the civil matters of the village. That has changed ever since the Second Shinobi World War. The sudden deaths of several clan heads caused constant distress within the village. The Nidaime Hokage, Senju Tobirama, was forced to give more power to the civil council so that they can help take care of the internal matters of the village while the shinobi was at war. After the war, the shinobi clans of Konoha took a long time to recuperate. It gave more than enough time to the civilian council to find loopholes and excuses to maintain their grasp of power. It has been 50 years since then, and the civilian council has become more and more corrupted and powerful, so much so that they could affect the entire Konoha economy at will, causing all the shinobi wages and pays to stop. They have even learned a way to use the shinobi of Konoha to earn money. The Sannin are known cage-level shinobi throughout the lands. It is because of the Sannin that multiple enemies have refrained from attacking Konoha. It is because of their reputation that many daimyo and minor village leaders that would pay a tremendous amount of money to hire any one of the Sannin. This was also the reason that the Hokage was buried in paperwork. The civilian council members would take advantage of their influence in Konoha to help certain daimyo or leaders pass their mission request directly to the mission assigning faculty for a substantial amount of cash. After the defection of Orochimaru, the council members only had Jiraiya and Tsunade left to assign missions to, which increases the demand between each council member. That had already caused conflicts between several civilian families that owned seats on the civilian council. Now that the Hokage have assigned the 2 remaining Sannin on a long-term mission, the civilian council members will no longer be able to maintain their usual cash flow, which may cause several families to be ruined due to the habit of heavy expenses that they have developed through time of wealth. Despite having to dealing with mountains worth of paperwork, this whole dilemma have benefited Konoha after all. In the near future, Konoha would have a Senju clan heir, one that might very well revive the Senju clan in Konoha. The civilian council would also lose quite an amount financial power, leaving them vulnerable to the attacks of the Hokage and Shinobi Council, which, if succeeded, might gain back some of their authority back. As Sarutobi is begrudgingly grinding through his paperwork, he was interrupted by Hikari knocking on his office door. The Sandaime let out a breath of relief as he beckoned her in. "Hokage-sama, I received this scroll from the messaging department. It was carried back by your personal carrier," stated Hikari. Sarutobi let out a breath of anxiety as he is handed the note. "Okay. Thank you, Hikari-chan, you are dismissed." Sarutobi waited until his assistant was outside until he slowly opened the envelope. It has been over 15 years since he's even heard from his sensei's wife. Sarutobi began to read the letter attached to the scroll. As he read, he was very glad that Mito had managed to rebuild a bit of Uzushiogakure and had even developed a bond with the survivors, despite their early death. Finally, at the end of the letter, he was very glad that Mito had gladly agreed to their proposal. Sarutobi sent a few Anbu to retrieve Jiraiya and Tsunade. Tsunade, Jiraiya, Shizune and Kakashi were having a nice meal together at a newly opened ramen stand, Ichiraku Ramen. The owner Tucci was a kind and talkative man, one that would make customers return with goodwill. "I've got to say, Tucci, your ramen is certainly the best ramen I've ever had," said Jiraiya as he continued to slurp on the broth. "The noodles and broth are both complementing each other perfectly, truly amazing." "Yes, I agree, I am usually not a fan of ramen because of the oily broth, but your ramen is very light and your broth is very refreshing," said Tsunade with a smile. "I will definitely come back for more," finished the Sannin as Kakashi and Shizune nodded in agreement. "Thank you for your kind compliments Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama," said Tucci with a smile. "I am very glad that such famous shinobi like yourselves enjoy my food." The four customers just smiled as they finished their ramen. A few sudden chakra signatures suddenly appeared behind Tsunade and Jiraiya. Looking back, they found an Enbu team looking for them. "Jiraiya-sama, Tsunade-sama, Hokage-sama has requested your audience." Tsunade and Jiraiya pretty much can assume that this was regarding the reply of Uzushiogakure. "Hi, we will be there shortly," replied Tsunade as the Anbu team nodded and left. The two Sannin paid for their meals then left for the Hokage office, leaving Shizune and Kakashi alone. Shizune sighed and suddenly had on a somber expression as she saw her sensei and her sensei's fiancé leave. She could safely assume that the meeting was pertaining their leave. Even though that Shizune knew that leaving the village was the best bet for the two Sannin, she could not help but feel left out. Tsunade had become a mother figure for her throughout the years and she doesn't want to be alone again. Kakashi, seeing Shizune's sudden mood change, decides to ask, "Are you okay, Shizune?" Shizune looked up a little at the Anbu member and hesitantly replied, "I just feel like that I am losing my family all over again," somberly replied Shizune as she peered her sight from Kakashi. Kakashi sighed as he put a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Shizune, I know exactly how you feel. Jiraiya has become a full father figure for me, and I also feel like I am losing my family right now. But Tusan reminded me that we will never be alone. They will return in a few years. They will not forget us or stop loving us, so you don't have to worry." Despite feeling better after his words, Shizune decided to express her feelings more. "Thank you, Kakashi, but I still don't like be alone for the few years. It makes it even worse when I'm all alone in my home, with no one there to welcome my return or ushering my goodbye." Shizune felt tears well up in her eyes as she spilled her feelings. Shizune was broken out of her sobbing as she felt someone wrap their arms around her frame. Looking up, she saw that Kakashi was hugging her. Temporarily forgetting her sadness, Shizune blushed. "Kakashi is hugging me." Shizune started to breathe heavily as she let the boy continue to hug her as she gripped on his uniform. Over the years, Shizune had spent more time with Kakashi, mostly on mission with she as the medic of the team. She had healed him on multiple occasions, and she must admit that she was attracted to him. "Shizune, you still have your friends. I can tell you from experience that it is not good to keep one's emotions at arm's length. Doing that would just slowly put one further into their own loneliness." Kakashi suddenly came up with an idea. Shizune?" Kakashi nervously caught Shizune's attention. "How about you move in with Emmy?" finished Kakashi with a nervous expression. To say Shizune was shocked was an understatement. She would have had a million guesses and she would have never guessed that. "I have no ulterior motives, I just thought that the both of us could benefit from this. It would seem like that we are still living with family. I would be there to welcome you home, tell you goodbye, and you could do the same for me," followed up Kakashi. "So how about it?" Shizune was contemplating the implications of living together with Kakashi. Sure, there might be rumors that will start, but it would be better than living alone in that big apartment. And Kakashi was right, it would be like living with family again, as their currently relationship was that similar to that of a brother and sister. "I might need to think this over. But I would really like it if we lived together." It was then that the two teens noticed that they were still hugging each other. Faster than lightning they separated, with Kakashi with a little blush and Shizune with a face that resembles a tomato. Tucci had on a grin while he looked at the two shinobi, indicating that he might have heard what they said. The young Anbu stood up and cleared his throat. "I have a mission. I'll see you later, okay?" asked Kakashi. "Hi," whispered a red Shizune as Kakashi used Shunshin to leave the area, a soft smile decorating her face. Tsunade and Jiraiya had arrived at the Hokage office about 10 minutes ago. In that time the Hokage had showed them both the letter that Mito had sent them. Jiraiya was very glad that Tsunade was right about the fact that Mito would be happy to have them. He was also surprised about the deaths of the few Uzumaki survivors. It is quite a shame for such a powerful clan to dwindle down to such feeble numbers. All that was left of the pure-blood Uzumaki were Uzumaki Mito, and Uzumaki Kushina. Tsunade and their child were only part Uzumaki. Tsunade was saddened by the fact that some of her remaining relatives had died. But she was also quite glad that Kushina was born before her mother's death. That means the Uzumaki clan still had a chance of surviving. Kushina might also be a great friend for her child. "Sensei, how much time would it take for you to gather the resources Mito-sama needs?" asked Jiraiya. "It would take 1 day for me to gather the food and raw materials, so you two can leave the day after tomorrow." "Hi, we will leave the day after tomorrow then." Dismissed, Tsunade and Jiraiya nodded and started towards the door. "Enjoy your paperwork, sensei," remarked Jiraiya as he left, making Sarutobi scowl at him and Tsunade giggle. It has been a day since Tsunade and Jiraiya received Mito's letter and they had gathered all the material Mito requested. Jiraiya had sealed all the material into various scrolls, making it much easier to travel. Both Tsunade and Jiraiya were very excited about the trip. Tsunade would get to see her beloved grandmother after many years, as well as visit Uzu Shiogakure. Jiraiya was also very happy because it was during this trip that their baby will be born. They would officially be a family. Being an orphan himself, Jiraiya always wanted a family to call his own, and he would finally achieve his dream. Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune and Kakashi were having their last moment together for the next few years. The two Sannin were very surprised when Kakashi told them that Shizune would be moving in with him. Even though Kakashi explained his reason to them, it did not stop Jiraiya from teasing the hell out of him. Saying things like, "Don't do anything I wouldn't," or, "Be sure to use protection." Tsunade also made sure that he didn't do any inappropriate to her surrogate daughter by threatening to castrate him with a spoon if she had become a surrogate grandmother when she came back. Of course, during the whole conversation, Shizune just remained quiet and constantly blushed at their phrases. It finally came the time for the two Sannin to leave. Each giving Kakashi and Shizune a hug, they set out their journey to Uzu no Kuni. "Come back safely and soon to San, Ka-san," Kakashi prayed. "I wish you have a happy and healthy baby, Tsunade-sama," prayed Shizune. It has been 36 hours since Jiraiya and Tsunade left Konoha. They had traveled at full speed, meaning that to most people, including most shinobi, would see nothing other than a blur or a whiz of sound when they passed them by. The reason for the high-speed travel was because that they cannot afford to be seen or somehow allow themselves to be tracked by anybody. The fact that Uzu Shiogakure still stand was a secret of great importance, because if the fact was leaked out, many shinobi villages of various lands would try to either destroy it entirely or try to steal any remaining ninjutsu or fuinjutsu scrolls. "How much longer will it be until we arrive, Tsunade-chan?" asked Jiraiya. "According to the map, we should arrive at the borders of Uzu no Kuni very shortly," replied Tsunade as she examined the map. The map the two are using is only a basic geological map that is commonly found and used by many. Thus, it is hard to pinpoint where exactly the recovered part of the village is. Mito couldn't include a map within her letter because she doesn't want to take the risk of someone intercepting the letter, despite the protection seal she put on it. Mito had encrypted a plan within the letter. She explained that she has a unique ability to sense the emotions of others. It was chakras sensory of the highest caliber. When Jiraiya and Tsunade arrive within 10 miles of Uzu Shiogakure, Mito would be able to sense their presence, and will come out to greet them back to the village. Jiraiya and Tsunade were looking out onto the horizon, showing many islands in the giant body of water of Uzu no Kuni. Suddenly a shadow began to cover a line of the horizon. The closer the shadow got to the mainland, the more the shadow shifted to a human shape. "Is that?" Jiraiya said with squinted eyes. The shadow began to lighten as it showed long white hair following behind the person, and soon, the face of the person was revealed and it was Uzumaki Mito with a warm smile on her face. Tsunade could never forget the face of the woman that had taken care of her for most of her adolescence and had taught her all that she knew about fuinjutsu. The Sannin felt a little guilty about letting her grandma live alone in Uzu for so many years. She really must have missed her. "Baa-chan," cried Tsunade as she ran towards Mito and gave her a giant hug. The Uzumaki leader smiled and opened her arms to her little girl. "It is great to see you too, Su-chan," said a happy Mito as she gave Tsunade a motherly hug. "Oh, I missed you, honey." whispered the elderly woman as she patted Tsunade on the head like she did when her granddaughter was a little girl. Jiraiya walked towards the pair with a smile on his face. "It is great to see you again, Mito-sama," said the man with a bow. Mito broke the hug with her granddaughter as she looked at Jiraiya. "Oh Jiraiya-chan, just call me Ba-chan like Su-chan, we are family now." All three of them shared a smile before Mito leads the way to the village. The trio of ninja traveled by water through the many islands of Uzu no Kuni. They are nearing the epicenter of the country. They grouped soon reached a large island right in the middle of the many surrounding islands. It has a natural barrier of tall stone walls surrounding its perimeter. This is Uzu Shiogakure. There is a giant gate at the lower middle of the wall. Jiraiya, Tsunade and Mito headed towards the gate, and the two Sannin noticed that there was a very complex protection seal preventing the gate to be opened by foreigners. "This is an incredible protection seal, I've never seen so many layers of protection," said a odd Jiraiya as he studied the seal. Despite being a seal master himself in Konoha standards, this level of fuinjutsu is well above his league. Mito smiled as she answered, "By overlapping so many seals to complement each other, it is no longer a protection seal, and it is a lock." Mito unsealed a scroll from her robes and revealed it to be another complex seal. "This is the key to the village. And on this scroll is the method to unlock each layer of the seal that has been ordered specifically to match the seal on the village gate." Mito placed the scroll on the ground as she adds some chakra into the scroll. The seal on the scroll started to move off the paper and slowly moved and attached itself onto the seal on the gate. The two seals began to overlap into a perfect fit, exactly like a lock and a key. The entire gate began to glow blue, and slowly the gate opened itself. Tsunade and Jiraiya waited anxiously for the gate to open as they tried to peer into the village with their gaze. The two Sannin were surprised when they saw the state of the village. All the ruins that should be littered around the area were all cleared away, fully bloomed sakura trees and various plant life decorated the majority of the area. Farmlands and cattle's drives were spread amongst the outer rim of the area, and right in the middle of the village was a building that looks almost identical to the Senju clan compound. The main living building is a two-story high Japanese-style complex that was painted with a light brown shade. There are several smaller houses in a similar fashion located at each corner of the compound. An intricately designed pond was put onto the yard of the compound. The water was very clear and it was filled with many koi fish, making many colors dance around in the water. Sakura trees and flower beds surrounded the pond, and a stone bridge connected the two sides of the big pond. And there is a big gazebo on the other side of the pond. "Wow, Ba-chan, how did you guys manage to do this by yourselves?" asked an odd Tsunade. "The few of us easily moved the ruins of the city various seals. We simply applied a large-scale storage seal to seal the rubble, then disposed of it. But before we did all that, we did salvage what we could in the remains of Uzu Shiogakure. In the end we managed to locate most of our jutsu. This compound was built using the resources from the ruins, and as you might have noticed, I designed it almost exactly like our home in Konoha." Jiraiya and Tsunade listened intently as Mito continued. "We didn't know much about construction, so we casted a high-level genjutsu on some carpenters and construction workers to make them think that they are building this compound in Nami no Kuni, and hired them to build this compound," finished Mito as the three entered the compound. Tsunade and Jiraiya were shown around the compound, and despite the size, all the available space were all used efficiently. There was a sizable library containing the Uzumaki scrolls, various training dojos spread among the interior. The overall theme of the place was of traditional Japanese architecture. The entire compound was made out of wood. Mito didn't have the majority of the compound painted as it created a memento of her last husband Hashirama. The trio reached the main living building and looked through the rooms. The two Sannin chose a room at the end of the hall. The room had a sufficient size. It had its own balcony, large windows, large closet and its own bathroom. A king-sized bed sat in the middle of the room attached to the back wall, and much to their delight, there was a beautiful yellow crib with a soft small mattress on it. It also had small animals sewn into it. "Ba-chan, that is a beautiful crib. I know our child would love it." "Thank you," said Tsunade with a smile. "You're welcome, dear, I made the crib myself," Mito said, glad that they liked the crib. "This is the second one I've made this year." "Oh, yes, I almost forgot, there is the Uzumaki heiress. said Jiraiya with remembrance. Yes, would you two like to see her? The couple nodded with a smile, wanting to see the baby girl. Mito led them to her own room, which was almost exactly like their room. Also on the side of Mito's bed was a similar crib, only this one was red, with an overall feminine feel. Inside the crib was an adorable baby. She had beautiful shining violet eyes. Signs of Uzumaki red hair decorated her head. She was wearing a little pink whole body outfit that looked very cozy and warm. Oh, Kushi-chan, you woke up already. You usually sleep much longer. You want to meet our guests too, huh? Cooed Mito as Kushina giggled cutely. Tsunade slowly approached the crib, and looked down at the baby girl. She is beautiful, thought the Sannin as she smiled down at the little baby. Ba-chan, can I hold her? Mito nodded at her granddaughter. Of course you can, Su-chan. With Mito's nod, Tsunade proceeded to scoop the girl into her arms. Kushina had a look of confusion on her face that made her look even more adorable. Hello Kushi-chan. Oh, you are so cute, cooed Tsunade as she rubbed her face with Kushina's. Jiraiya looked on with a smile. He knew that Tsunade would be a great mother. He walked over to his fiancée and looked at the baby. She was indeed a very cute child. When Kushina looked up at Jiraiya, she began to giggle and reached for his white hair. Tsunade smiled as she handed the baby to Jiraiya, who gladly accepted the small bundle. Kushina grabbed onto his hair as Jiraiya hugged her, already feeling a connection to the precious girl. Mito looked at her granddaughter and grandson-in-law with a smile, and decides to voice her troubles. Jiraiya, Tsunade, she said with a serious voice, making the other two look back at her with curiosity. As you know, Kushina's parents had passed away already, and at my old age I won't be able to take care of her for very long. Can the two of you adopt her as your daughter? Tsunade and Jiraiya were very surprised. They knew that the girl's parents were dead, but they never actually thought about adopting her. Tsunade looked down at the babe in her fiancé's arms. She looked so precious and cute. She already felt a connection with the baby girl when she held her, and they were technique related. She looks at Jiraiya silently asking for his opinion. Jiraiya saw the look Tsunade gave him and started to contemplate him. Kushina was still hugging his frame and grasping onto his hair, already beginning to drift into sleep. Smiling, he would love it if she became his daughter, so he looked back at Tsunade and nodded with a smile. The two looked back at Mito with smile adorned on their faces and nodded. I would love to have her as our daughter, replied a glad Jiraiya. Mito smiled, feeling extremely relieved that Kushina would have a complete family as she grew up. Tsunade looked down at her new daughter, Kushi-chan, can you say Ka-chan? Kushina only giggled and began to reach for her new mother. Time skip 8 months. It was a beautiful morning at Uzushiogakure, birds were singing, wind set sail to the sakura leaves on the trees, and distant sounds of the waves graced the morning air. Tsunade was sitting on the balcony of her room holding Kushina to her chest as she breastfed her. Ever since she was pregnant, she began to produce breast milk, so ever since she adopted Kushina she started to feed her. And of course Jiraiya commented that she has enough to feed Kushina, their child, and sometimes him. You sure are hungry today Kushi-chan, said the woman happily down to her daughter. Kushina didn't reply, but instead she just stared at her mother with her big sparkling violet eyes. If Tsunade wasn't in a comfortable position, and if she wasn't 9 months pregnant, she would hug the living daylights out of the adorable girl. The girl was just the cutest baby, endless energy by day, and sweet little angel by night. Being a mother for Kushina really reminded her of the time when her little brother was alive. Nawaki was not so much younger than her, but he was one of the most childish people she knew. He was basically a big baby. The last 8 months has been the best days of Tsunade's life. She originally thought that being on this isolated land would be boring, but it was quite the contrary. She and Mito would often spend time together cooking and training. It was very nice to get reacquainted with her grandmother. It had been quite some time since Tsunade had been so close to nature. She had gotten used to the busy streets of Konoha and violent battlegrounds of war. The pregnancy had affected Tsunade's physical health. She felt weaker and more exhausted than normal. But Jiraiya had been very supportive and helpful during these months. He had also officially proposed to her by getting her a beautiful ring crafted at Mount Myobuku. And also had been extremely handsome at their wedding ceremony, which had been the happiest time of her life. Short of their sensei, her entire family were there. They were the only people that mattered. Tsunade was due in a few days, and she had already taught Mito and Jiraiya what to do during her contraction, and they have set up a guest room to be a medical room. Tsunade felt someone wrap their arms on her shoulders and rested their chin on her head. "Su-chan, are you sure the morning wind wouldn't be harmful to the baby?" Tsunade looked over her shoulders to see her husband of 6 months and let out an amused sigh. "Jiraiya-kun once again. I am the best medic in the world. I made sure to make my pregnancy to be as safe and healthy as possible," finished Tsunade as she gave him a kiss. Jiraiya broke the kiss to look down at his beloved daughter. "Hey Kushi-chan. How is my princess doing today?" cooed Jiraiya as he scooped up his daughter from Tsunade. Kushina saw her father and began to chant, "Da, da, da." Jiraiya would often play with Kushina, change her diapers and give her baths. Throughout the past few months Jiraiya had fallen in love with the little ball of energy. "Oh, she can almost say daddy," said an excited Jiraiya, while a slightly peeved Tsunade looked on. "She can't even pronounce, ma," whined Tsunade as Jiraiya hid a smirk from his wife. "Oh, don't worry, Naruto will probably say mommy first." Tsunade decided to check the gender of the baby a few months ago, and the results turned out to be a boy. Once again Tsunade had lost a bet. Their child was officially Senju Naruto. Their nice conversation was interrupted when Tsunade felt a sudden unfamiliar sensation. She looked down and saw that her water just broke. "Jiraiya. My water just broke," cried Tsunade loudly as her eyes widened and quickly grabbed onto her husband. Jiraiya's eyes widened comically as he digested what is going on. "Oh my Kami, let's get to the medical room." Jiraiya picked up Tsunade gently as he speed-walked to the medic room and created a cage bunshin to find Mito. They soon reached the medical room and Jiraiya laid Tsunade down as Tsunade began to time her contractions and breathing. Jiraiya did as he was taught by his wife. He attacked an IV to Tsunade and began to guide her with her breathing tempo. Jiraiya's cage bunshin found Mito in the garden and told her the urgent news. "What?" cried the elderly woman. "Okay, then let's get going," yelled Mito as she used Shunshin to get there faster. Mito and Jiraiya were on each of Tsunade's side as she was ready to expel her womb. "Damn you Jiraiya. You did this to me." Jiraiya is yelling in agony as his hand is crushed by his wife with superhuman strength. He reinforced his hand with chakra as he stroked Tsunade's face as he coached her breathing. Mito was in front of Tsunade's vagina as she started to push the baby out. "Come on Tsunade-chan, push." Tsunade pushed every time she exhaled a breath, and the baby was slowly coming out. "Come on Tsunade-chan, the head is already out, just a few more seconds." Tsunade gritted her teeth in pain as she gave the rest of her strength into one push, and in just a flash, Senju Naruto was born, and landed directly into his great-grandma's arms. Mito was ecstatic as she looked down at the newborn. It truly was a miracle of life. "Wah!" came a wail, and then a boy with bright beautiful blue eyes came into view of Jiraiya. To say Jiraiya was happy would be an understatement. It was the first time he saw his own son, and he immediately fell in love with the crying bundle. The baby was a healthy little boy. Mito noticed that the baby weighed about 8 pounds, and based on his loud cries, he had a very powerful set of lungs. Let me see him," said an out-of-breath Tsunade. Smiling, Mito wrapped Naruto in a little blue blanket and brought him to his mother. Right when Mito handed over the crying babe over to Tsunade, the baby stopped crying, and looked up at his mother with his big blue eyes. Tsunade had tears of joy streaming down her face as she held her son close to her face, planting a few kisses on his face. Jiraiya kneeled down near his wife and son and wrapped his arm around his family. He kissed Tsunade on the lips lovingly and whispered in her ear, "Thank you Tsunade-heim." Tsunade kissed her husband back and caressed his battered hand with a regrettable expression. Jiraiya waved it off by hugging Tsunade and Naruto together lovingly, very happy that he finally have a family of his own. Mito also had tears streaming down her face. She was very happy that Tsunade finally have a happy family of her own. Taking a camera out of some seal, she quickly took dozens of pictures of the new family. At the end, they took over 100 pictures which included every member of their small happy family. And as the cover of their family album was a picture of a sleeping Naruto hugging a sleeping Kushina in a crib. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.